My name is Nozaki Jean, a 34-year-old single man. I am now stranded, nearly naked, in an unfamiliar forest in another world. As I eat a roasted fruit, I wonder how I ended up in this situation. It all began with a very common, cliché incident. On my way to work, I saved a student and was hit by a truck. As my consciousness faded, my last thought was of reincarnation. My eyes snapped open to a completely new reality. I awoke in a pure white room, where a distant figure greeted me. The serene, androgynous being asked if I knew who it was. I looked up, stammering in utter disbelief at the sight. The being declared itself a god and announced my non-negotiable reincarnation. I could only stare back, completely dumbfounded by the sudden news. As a light formed in its hand, the god told me it was time to go. Its serene expression vanished, replaced by annoyance as it called the task a pain. This god was just fulfilling a tedious contract left by its predecessor. I panicked, realizing this god was bad news, and I had no information. The god confirmed this world had levels and magic, having read my mind. It explained I would be transferred as I am, not reborn as a baby. I argued that this was a transfer, not a true reincarnation. The god insisted my body would be remade, so it was reincarnation. It then casually added that there would be no special cheat skills. It raised its hand dismissively, clearly done with our conversation. Annoyed, the god said it was a pain and decided to just send me. I was thrown backward, flailing helplessly in a white void. My desperate pleas to wait were lost as I tumbled through the emptiness. My body became a tiny speck before disappearing completely. My vision slowly returned to the sight of sunlight through leaves. I awoke with wide, confused eyes, taking in my new surroundings. I was lying on the forest floor, completely and utterly naked. I slowly sat up, trying to process my bizarre and vulnerable state. I cursed the god, furious that I had no cheats or even clothes. Forcing myself to calm down, I decided to assess the situation logically. I approached a massive, gnarled tree to climb for a better view. With great effort, I pulled myself up through the thick branches. From the top, I was stunned to see an endless, unbroken sea of forest. The god had sent me to a terrible place. Moving blindly was too dangerous. I decided my first priority was water, then I would build a base. But before anything else, there was a more immediate problem to solve. I began stripping the bark from a tree to make some clothing. From the bark and leaves, I fashioned a crude but effective loincloth. I admired my work, feeling I could now properly focus on exploring. With a thumbs up, I joked that I had protected my dignity. My expression hardened with resolve. It was time for survival to begin. My bare foot pressed down on the unfamiliar soil of the forest floor. I pushed my way through the dense, oppressive jungle foliage. It was exhausting work, pushing aside the massive leaves. I began to doubt if I could find a water source in this environment. A sudden rustling sound from a nearby bush made me freeze instantly. My eyes darted around, my senses on high alert for the source. I had a realization. In this dense forest, sound was my best guide. I determined the sound was a small animal moving away from me. With my vision limited, the information from my ears was overwhelming. Following the sounds led me to the edge of a clearing and a river. I stood panting at the bank, overcome with relief at my success. With a joyful cry, I ran and splashed into the cool, clear water. I drank greedily, savoring the monumental victory of quenching my thirst. I pressed my hands together in a gesture of profound, prayerful thanks. Next, I needed to find a base, close to the water but safe. I discovered a perfect, cave-like hollow in the roots of a giant tree. It was an ideal location, only a 2-minute walk from the river. I closed my eyes, picturing this place as my new home. My eyes snapped open with certainty. I had decided on this spot. The view pulls back, showing me squatting before my new shelter. Now I needed food and found a small, apple-like fruit nearby. I cautiously tested its juice on my arm, finding it safe to eat. I took a small bite, planning to wait hours for any reaction. I was relieved to see that there seemed to be plenty of edible plants. With my other needs met, only one task remained: making fire. I grunted with effort, furiously working the hand drill. As smoke appeared, I carefully blew on the tinder to nurture the ember. I urged the spark to catch, my entire focus on this crucial moment. A wisp of smoke signaled that I was on the verge of success. With a soft pop, a small, precious flame finally sprang to life. I warmed my hands, thinking it was the most beautiful fire I'd ever seen. Utterly exhausted, I lay down by the fire in my new home. I yawned, already planning to make preserved meat for my journey. My eyes opened with determination. Tomorrow, I would prepare to hunt. As I settled in, I noticed something strange on the ground. A mysterious, translucent black plate had appeared beside me. I stared in wonder at the glowing object that had just materialized. Looking out at the dark forest, I vowed that I would survive here. I had fashioned a simple but deadly-looking spear from a tree branch. The gnarled bark of the trees provided cover as I prepared to hunt. With my new spear in hand, I was ready to face the forest dangers. I waited patiently on a high branch, scanning the area for prey. My plan was simple: build a trap near the river to catch animals. A rustling sound in the undergrowth immediately caught my attention. I spotted a bizarre creature, a white rabbit with huge ears and tusks. I wondered what it was, noting it was too small for my trap. The creature's massive ear twitched, sensing danger nearby. It stomped its foot on the ground, a clear sign of alarm. Without a moment's hesitation, the tusked rabbit bolted into the forest. From my perch, I sensed that whatever scared it was now approaching. My eye widened in anticipation, ready for what was to come. My jaw dropped in complete shock at the creature emerging from the trees. I instantly recognized the classic fantasy monster, a goblin. I couldn't believe it was real, even hearing its guttural language. The goblin wandered obliviously towards the area where my trap was hidden. My survival instincts were replaced by a gamer's logic, a chance for XP. My bare foot landed silently on the ground as I prepared to attack. With a grunt, Jin's foot presses firmly against the unfamiliar soil. Perched on a branch, he silently observes a lone goblin below. He tilts his head in confusion, wondering what the creature is. The goblin stops, its large nose twitching as it sniffs the air. It mutters, worried that the scent it laid was for a beast. Suddenly, two more goblins emerge, chattering excitedly around a bush. One goblin tumbles into a pitfall trap concealed by a lattice of sticks. The others peer down into the darkness, their prey now captured. From his hiding spot, Jin's eyes widen as he understands the scene. Clad in a leafy loincloth, he grips his sharpened spear, ready for action. He grimaces, realizing his mistake has led a creature into their trap. He decides he has no choice but to intervene now. A tusked, rabbit-like creature plummets helplessly into the dark pit. Jin lands with deadly purpose, silencing the trapped animal with his spear. A goblin, enraged by the theft, charges forward with a crude club. Jin narrows his eyes, his focus absolute as he targets his first foe. A nearby goblin watches in stunned silence as its comrade falls. Jin calms his racing heart, telling himself this is just another fight. He swiftly dodges the goblin's clumsy swing, moving inside its guard. His hand clenches into a tight, disciplined fist, ready to counter. With a sharp ki, he unleashes a powerful straight punch. The goblin is sent flying backward, its body limp from the impact. He examines his fist, confirming the clean hit to its vital point. An attack from his blind spot catches him completely by surprise. He curses, realizing a monster's weak points are different from a human's. The remaining goblins screech, their fury renewed by their comrade's fall. One swings the creature's entrails like a whip, a surprisingly clever tactic. He realizes they are attacking recklessly, trying to keep him at bay. His foot catches on a root, a deliberate, calculated misstep. He stumbles forward, feigning a loss of balance to create an opening. The goblin behind him screams, raising its club for the killing blow. A grim smile touches Jin's lips. He confirms he made the opening on purpose. He intended all along to lure a downward strike from his opponent. As one goblin reaches for its weapon, Jin readies his counterattack. He lets out a sharp, focused battle cry, exploding in emotion. His hand strikes like a viper, a precise and disabling blow. He stands over the goblin, his form a picture of deadly grace. The goblin's head snaps back from the force of the final blow. The creature crumples to the forest floor, its fight extinguished. Its body gives one last, reflexive twitch before falling completely still. Jin stands over his last foe, the immediate danger now past. His expression is grim, his eyes hard with the reality of combat. He raises his foot, declaring that the fight is now over. He surveys the clearing, now littered with the bodies of the slain. He catches his breath, the adrenaline slowly beginning to fade. A single thought crystallizes in his mind. He has actually won. His fist trembles, the shock of killing a monster setting in. He throws his arms to the sky, letting out a primal roar of victory. Time passes. An alone figure is seen walking along a forest river. The figure is Jin, now chasing after one of the tusked creatures. He pursues his prey relentlessly through the winding forest path. Now bearded and clad in hides, he shouts for the creature to wait. He roars, vowing that he will not let his next meal escape. His senses, sharpened by reaching level 8, track its every move. He sees his chance, planting his foot to launch himself forward. His hand closes around the creature's fleeing leg, his grip like iron. He tackles the beast, his physical abilities having grown immensely. The captured creature lets out a defeated cry, its struggle over. Carrying his kill, he spots a useful plant, calling it a big catch. He has discovered Tugarashi, a plant he knows is a valuable repellent. He decides to gather as much of the useful plant as he can. His enhanced hearing picks up the familiar chattering of goblins nearby. He peeks from behind a tree, watching two of them in a clearing. The goblins seem to be arguing, their chattering loud and incessant. He yawns, bored by them now, deciding to let the weaklings go. He strokes his beard, feeling he has become the king of this jungle. Suddenly, the goblins fall silent, sensing an approaching danger. A terrifying roar echoes through the forest, shattering his confidence. Jin flinches, wondering what could have made that horrifying sound. A hulking, dark silhouette emerges from the trees, dwarfing the others. His eyes widen in shock. He recognizes it as a hobgoblin. The massive creature stands before the cowering goblins, its size immense. He wonders if the creature is scolding the smaller ones for fighting. A close-up reveals the hobgoblin's cold, utterly merciless eye. Its massive hand tightens around the hilt of its crude, heavy blade. With shocking brutality, the hobgoblin tears the smaller goblin in two. Jin watches in absolute horror from the safety of the undergrowth. He realizes this is the first monster he's met that is stronger than him. The hobgoblin's head snaps around, its eyes locking directly onto Jin. It lets out a furious roar, having found its new target. For the first time, Jin is the one being hunted as he flees. He runs for his life, letting out a cry of pure terror. Panic is etched on his face as he pushes himself to his limits. He scrambles up a tree, looking down at his relentless pursuer. He notes the distance is widening. The forest hinders the large beast, but he knows he can't escape its keen sense of smell. He concludes there is no safe place left for him in this forest. He decides he must escape the forest entirely. He cannot win this fight. He curses his earlier arrogance about being the king of the jungle. The pure, primal fear makes it impossible for him to stop trembling. He arrives back at the entrance to his tree root shelter. Now equipped with a pack and spear, he stands before his former home. He bids a silent farewell to the home that sheltered him for months. With a final, determined look, he turns his back on his past. He walks away, venturing deeper into the vast, unknown wilderness. That night, he rests by a small, lonely campfire. He eats nervously, startled by the strange sounds of the dark forest. The journey is arduous, forcing him to cross wide, flowing rivers. He scales a sheer cliff face, using thick vines to pull himself up. He finally emerges from the dense woods into a new, mountainous region. Nozaki Jin sits in solitude by a secluded forest watering hole. A single, heavy drop of water falls from his cupped hands. A sudden sound from the trees makes him flinch in surprise. He sees a bizarre, two-headed deer and wonders what it could be. The journey is long and arduous, pushing him to his physical limits. Huddled from the rain, he wonders how many days have passed. Trembling, he admits he can't sleep and craves human contact. A sleek, cat-like beast with a curled tail sniffs the air. Disgusted by the scent of mud, the creature turns and walks away. Gene gasps for air as he finally claws his way out of a mud pit. Covered in filth, he realizes with relief that the mud saved him. He continues his trek barefoot across the unfamiliar forest floor. His loneliness is so profound, he wishes he had someone to talk to. Hearing a noise, he peeks from behind a tree, sensing something nearby. He wonders if it's another beast, or perhaps one of the goblins. Through the dense leaves, a single, focused eye is visible. He sees the top of a person's head bobbing over a small rise. His own eye widens in pure, unadulterated shock at the sight. He stumbles backward, completely stunned by what he has found. He stands frozen, staring at the first human he's seen in this world. A young woman with short brown hair carefully gathers herbs. She pauses in her work, her basket resting on her lap. Her expression is curious and peaceful, unaware of his presence. Overjoyed, Gene leaps out, waving his arms and calling out to her. His face is a mask of pure, unrestrained joy and excitement. Her expression shifts instantly to one of shock and utter terror. She seems to scream at him, telling him not to come any closer. He freezes, completely confused by her terrified reaction. He is outraged when he realizes she has called him a goblin. With a final scream, the girl turns and flees into the woods. He groans in despair. He finally met a person, only for this to happen. A terrifying roar suddenly echoes through the trees, startling him. He recognizes the roar and the heavy footstep that follows it. Realizing it's the hobgoblin, he immediately breaks into a sprint. He understands now that the monster has been hunting him all along. He curses himself for being careless and allowing himself to be seen. He sees the hobgoblin has captured the girl, relieved she is unharmed. He shouts to the hulking monster, demanding its attention. The hobgoblin turns, enraged, as Gene tells it to unhand her. He grabs a thick vine, swinging through the air toward the beast. He lets out a furious, protective roar as he closes the distance. A powerful, two-fisted blow connects squarely with the monster's head. The impact sends the hobgoblin staggering, dropping the girl. Gene lands firmly on the ground, planting himself between them. The hobgoblin clutches its head, stunned by the unexpected assault. Gene is shocked that a single, powerful punch wasn't enough to drop it. He turns to the fallen girl, asking if she is okay. The hobgoblin sneers, wondering if there's some infighting going on. The monster stands ready, its massive blade held at its side. Its blank, white eyes are filled with pure, murderous intent. Gene feels an immense pressure, comparing it to facing a wild bear. He knows he cannot run while the girl is behind him. The hobgoblin charges forward, shouting for him to come on. It raises its massive blade, preparing for a devastating overhead swing. Gene ducks low, the wind from the blade whistling over his head. He slips inside the monster's guard, evading the powerful blow. He notes its heavy swings are slow, giving him an opening to counter. He attempts to grab the creature's arm to control its movements. His hand makes contact with the beast's incredibly dense muscle. He recoils, shocked by how hard its body is like solid rock. The hobgoblin spins, its blade arcing in another wide, deadly sweep. It roars that a single one of its hits means instant death. Gene ducks again, thinking the monster's crude attacks are a joke. He spots a weakness. the thin layer of muscle over its abdomen. He drives his fist into the target, shouting, "How about this?" The hobgoblin's eyes bulge in pain as it screams that it hurts. The monster staggers back, clutching its wounded midsection in agony. Jean lets out a triumphant roar, believing he has the upper hand. He follows up with another powerful blow to its shoulder. "I did it," he thinks, seeing the monster reeling from his attack. Enraged, the hobgoblin swings wildly, catching him completely off guard. Blood streams from the gash above its eye, inflaming its fury. Jean curses, realizing its movements are now reckless and unpredictable. He raises his arms in a desperate block against a two-handed blow. The sheer force of the impact sends him flying through the air. He crashes hard against the unyielding trunk of a large tree. He slides to the ground, the air violently knocked from his lungs. Blood drips from his mouth as he curses in pain and frustration. He stumbles to his feet, dazed and reeling from the concussive force. He can't believe the incredible power behind that single blocked hit. He realizes the damage he took, even while guarding, was immense. He faces the monster again, calling it a freak of nature. The hobgoblin swings its blade in a furious horizontal arc. Jean ducks under the attack, his hair rustling from the passing wind. His eyes narrow. He realizes he can win if he exploits a weakness. He sees the monster's left eye is now swollen shut. It has a blind spot. Its one good eye glares at him with pure, focused hatred. Jean prepares himself for a final, desperate gambit to win the fight. The hobgoblin's good eye twitches, sensing his opponent's movement. For a split second, it loses sight of him as he moves. Jean unleashes a powerful high kick, a calculated and obvious feint. As the monster predictably raises its arm to block the kick, Jean inwardly pleads for his risky, all-or-nothing plan to succeed. The hobgoblin focuses on the attack, its guard raised high. Jean uses the monster's blocking arm as a pivot point to launch himself. He swings his body with incredible, gravity-defying speed and agility. He lands squarely on the hobgoblin's broad, muscular back. The monster is shocked, caught completely by surprise by the maneuver. He immediately snakes his arm around its thick, powerful neck. He locks in a perfect, rear-naked choke, digging his heels in hard. The hobgoblin lets out a final, agonized shriek of pure, unadulterated pain. Its club smashes uselessly against a tree as it thrashes wildly. Jean clings to its back, his head slamming against the rough bark. He is pinned between the monster and the tree, his body battered. The impact echoes through the forest with a thunderous crack. He slumps to the ground, his strength finally giving out. The hobgoblin's claws have torn deep into his shoulder. His trembling hand lies uselessly on the blood-soaked earth. He knows it's no use. His consciousness is rapidly fading away. At this rate, he realizes he will simply pass out from his injuries. With his last ounce of strength, his fingers fumble at his belt pouch. He recalls the dangerously spicy togarashi he'd given up on eating. He wonders if eating it now will jolt him awake or simply kill him. The hobgoblin looms over him, a terrifying silhouette of muscle and hate. It raises its club, roaring as it prepares for the finishing blow. He refuses to accept death. He knows he will not die here. The image of the girl's face flashes in his mind. He must see her again. He shoves the entire handful of togarashi into his mouth and bites down hard. The monster charges forward, its heavy footsteps shaking the ground. It closes the distance, ready to crush the life from his body. The heavy club comes whistling down, aimed directly at his head. His eyes snap open, tears streaming from the unimaginable, searing heat. He dodges under the swing, lunging forward into the monster's blind spot. In a fluid motion, he moves inside the creature's guard. He spits the caustic, chewed-up mash of plant and saliva. The vile concoction splatters directly into the hobgoblin's one good eye. The monster lets out a shriek of pure agony, dropping its weapon. He knows it worked. It felt like a bomb had just exploded in his own mouth. He plants his bare foot firmly on the ground, gathering his remaining strength. With a final, desperate ki, he prepares to end the fight. He channels all his power into a single, brutal, fight-ending uppercut. The blow connects, and black blood pours from the monster's ruined face. As the hobgoblin collapses, Gene whispers to himself that he has won. But he can't move. His body has reached its absolute limit. His gaze is unfocused, his vision beginning to blur at the edges. The world around him starts to fade into darkness. His consciousness finally slips away into a welcome blackness. He and the monster lie defeated, two still forms on the forest floor. Through the haze, he hears a small, worried voice calling his name. He barely recognizes it as the girl calling for Goblin San. The girl runs back into the clearing, her eyes wide with shock. She gasps in horror at the sight of his battered, unconscious body. His last thought is a confused one. Who is she calling Goblin? She sees the blood pouring from his shoulder and realizes how grave it is. The scene transitions to a peaceful view of the distant mountains. A small, rustic village is nestled in a clearing in the woods. The camera zooms in on a single, humble-looking house. He awakens to the unfamiliar sight of a rough-hewn wooden ceiling. His eyes flutter open, his mind dazed and disoriented. He is lying in a simple but comfortable bed in a rustic room. He weakly wonders where in the world he could possibly be. He remembers the brutal fight with the hobgoblin, and then collapsing. He tries to sit up, but a sharp pain lances through his body. He understands now. The girl must have somehow saved him. This means he is in her house, a real human dwelling at last. Overwhelmed, he buries his face in his hands and begins to weep. After months of brutal solitude, he has finally found civilization. He thinks of how long he has dreamed of sleeping in a proper bed. He looks around the simple room, a profound sense of relief washing over him. A strange thought occurs to him. This must be the girl's bed. He looks down at the pillow he is resting on. He blushes, suddenly aware of how sharp his senses have become. The door bursts open, and the girl rushes in, relieved to see him awake. He flails in surprise, insisting he wasn't sniffing her pillow. Her relief instantly turns to panic as she begs him to run away. She points frantically outside, telling him the villagers are coming for him. He stumbles to the window, completely bewildered by her warning. She explains they are coming to attack him, Mr. Goblin. He looks out at the approaching mob, trying to understand. He cannot fathom what is happening or what he could have done. He sees a smarmy, blonde-haired young man leading the group. The title page appears. Episode 4, The Strange Egoist. The heavy, booted feet of the villagers march toward the house. She tells him they look like they are absolutely determined to kill him. She explains that a hobgoblin's materials are rare and extremely valuable. He snarls, realizing they intend to kill him and steal his prize. The heavy wooden door of the small house stands between them. The apprentice tells his cronies to wait for him outside. He begins pounding on the door, demanding to be let in. He leans in close, mockingly calling for the pharmacist apprentice. The girl shushes Jean, who realizes she is now the official village pharmacist. She pushes against the door, refusing to let them harm her patient. A brief flashback shows villagers gossiping about the apprentice. The apprentice's cronies jeer, telling her to open the door. Jean overhears one of them promise to kill him without making him suffer. The girl insists they don't know he's awake, urging him to escape. She hands him a healing poultice, instructing him on how to use it. He is touched, but asks if this is the time to worry about him. She insists that as a patient, he must listen to his pharmacist. The apprentice's voice cuts through, suggesting they just kill them both. Jin's enhanced hearing picks up the vile conversation from outside. The men argue, one saying it would be a waste to kill the girl. The apprentice smirks, assuring them he has other plans for her. Jin's eyes widen in fury as he hears the man vow to make her his plaything. His fist trembles with a barely contained, murderous rage. The girl is startled as he ignores her pleas and gets out of bed. He understands her resolve to protect him, even at her own cost. She clenches her fist, apologizing for the villagers' cruel actions. She looks at him, thanking him one last time for saving her life. He pushes past her, his mind set, striding towards the door and the fight to come. Nozaki Jin stumbles forward, his body racked with pain as he pleads for a moment. The young pharmacist stands defiantly, her arms spread wide to block the angry villagers. From the floor, Jean hears her insist that her patient requires absolute rest. He slams a fist into the dirt floor, enraged by his own powerlessness. A lone silhouette vanishes into the deep, dark woods, escaping the village's hostility. He flees through the trees, his battered body pushed to its absolute limit. Gasping for air, he realizes his stamina is gone and he is about to collapse. A villager shouts in alarm that their target is gone, having woken up. Filippo, the apprentice, emerges from the house, snarling that Jean has awakened. He roughly seizes the girl, who struggles and demands he let her go. With a vicious backhand, he screams at her to shut her mouth. From the safety of the treeline, Jean watches, his eyes wide with horror. One of the men orders the others to search, certain Jean must still be nearby. Filippo's face is shadowed as he notes that night is falling and they need torches. His expression is grim, his hair hiding his eyes as he contemplates his next move. He glares into the darkness, vowing that he will find Jean and kill him. Back in the wilderness, Jean stands alone, contemplating the apprentice's chilling threat. His eyes burn with cold fury as he promises himself that he will remember that face. The dense forest canopy looms above him, a symbol of his stark isolation. He looks up through the trees, seeing a single point of starlight in the black sky. A round fruit sizzles over a crackling fire, a small comfort in the wild. He rests at a shelter, a hollow in a great tree, slowly recovering his strength. He thinks of the pharmacist girl, realizing she has made a terrible mistake. His thoughts continue. She didn't just let a patient escape into a dangerous forest. He understands now that she had put her own body on the line for him. The vast, seemingly endless sea of trees stretches out before him in every direction. Smoke from his small campfire rises, a lone signal in the immense wilderness. He approaches his shelter, the massive, gnarled roots of the ancient tree. He pats down a bed of leaves, noting his new base is an improvement. He forages for food, his face close to the ground, searching for anything edible. His eyes widen in surprise as he discovers something promising in the undergrowth. He recognizes the plants are similar to those from his world, unearthing yam-like roots. He decides these nutritious roots will be his staple food while he recovers. He hunts a strange, lizard-like creature, planning to stock up on provisions. Inside his root cave shelter, a small fire burns, casting flickering shadows. He sits cross-legged, summoning the translucent black status screen before his eyes. He sees that he has reached level 10, gaining 2 levels from the hobgoblin fight. He curls up on his bed of leaves, realizing he hadn't had a moment to check. He reflects on the chaotic ordeal, from the hobgoblin to being hunted by villagers. Under the full moon, he concludes that people here are no different from his world. There are good people like the girl, and there are scum like the apprentice. He realizes with grim certainty that they are all, fundamentally, the same. Human. A new resolve hardens. He must meet killing intent with killing intent, or he will die. He knows it's not just a physical battle. He needs to be mentally prepared to kill. As he drifts off to sleep, he wonders if he truly has that kind of resolve. His face is troubled as he finally succumbs to an exhausted, uneasy sleep. He is plagued by a nightmare of the girl, her clothes being torn by shadowy hands. In his dream, her hand reaches out in a desperate, silent plea for help. He jolts awake, clutching his head, his body slick with a cold sweat. His eyes are wide with terror and a new, unshakable determination to act. He hunts a strange, salamander-like creature with a wide mouth and sharp fangs. He easily catches the creature by its tail, his strength slowly returning. He holds the struggling lizard, noting his recovery is still far from complete. He roasts his catch over a fire, thinking that meat is a welcome source of protein. He eats greedily, his mind replaying the hateful words of the blonde-haired apprentice. He recalls learning that she took over after the village's previous pharmacist died. This means, he realizes with a jolt, that she is utterly alone and without allies. He shakes his head, telling himself to stop thinking and focus only on healing. He grits his teeth, giving himself one more week to regain his lost strength. A single tear escapes his eye as he worries for her safety. He sends a desperate, silent plea into the empty forest for her to be safe. Time passes, marked by the slow, inexorable growth of the forest's roots and vines. A pair of tusked rabbits cautiously drink from a muddy watering hole. A week later, one of the rabbit's long ears twitches, sensing a strange presence. The rabbit is startled as a large, dark shape suddenly rises from the mud. Jean emerges from the mud pit, his entire body covered in a thick, dark coat. A glob of mud drips from his face. He admits he's still not prepared to kill humans. He looks at his mud-caked hand, wondering if this is what camouflage feels like. He resolves to avoid combat if at all possible, relying on stealth instead. His eyes gleam with grim determination through the earthen mask. All right, his bare, muddy foot presses firmly onto the ground as he sets out. He rises, a primeval creature of mud and muscle, ready to begin his mission. The quiet, rustic village appears nestled in a clearing at the edge of the woods. Two guards sit lazily by the door of the girl's house, their watch a tedious affair. One complains about the watch, while the other is sure their target won't return. The second guard whispers about the reward they'll get, warning his friend not to touch her. The first dismisses the threat, saying the village chief is too cowardly to cause more trouble. Hiding nearby, Jean overhears them and realizes they plan to go around back. The guard grins lewdly, saying the real fun will begin after this is over. A single guard stands watch at the back entrance, armed with a small sickle. From the bushes, Jean confirms the back is only guarded by one man. He flicks a small stone with his thumb, sending it flying as a perfect distraction. The stone clatters against a tree, and the guard turns, wondering about the noise. As the guard is distracted, a dark, muddy figure slips past him completely unnoticed. The guard looks around, sees nothing, and returns to his post, none the wiser. Jean peeks around the corner of the house, a silent, shadowy infiltrator. He sees the girl tied to a post and lets out a silent, horrified gasp. He approaches her quietly, his voice a low whisper as he asks if she's all right. She looks up, her eyes wide with fear, before recognizing him and whispering his name. He rushes to her side, relieved she's safe, and begins working on her bonds. He tells her he has come to rescue her, and that they must escape the village. She watches him, quietly telling him she will untie the ropes now. Her eyes close, her expression one of quiet sorrow rather than hopeful relief. She tells him she is staying, and he demands to know why. He stares at her, aghast, asking what she could possibly be thinking. She smiles gently, assuring him it's fine and that people are fundamentally good. He looks at her incredible, naive faith and calls her an idiot. The thick rope finally comes undone, falling to the ground with a soft rustle. His task is done, but his eye narrows, knowing the danger is far from over. The raw, chafed marks from the ropes are still visible around her ankles. Coarse, thick rope digs into tender skin, a symbol of cruel captivity. A villager's shout echoes. Someone named Donut has been struck down. Jean crouches by the freed girl as men order the house to be surrounded. The girl's face is a mask of terror as she desperately urges Jean to escape. She calls out to her strange protector, Goblin San, her voice filled with worry. The heavy wooden door to the yard begins to swing open with a groan. The apprentice, Filippo, bursts in, calling Jean a fool for daring to appear. His smug expression instantly vanishes, replaced by one of utter confusion. An explosive kick sends the door flying back, shattering into wooden shrapnel. Filippo is thrown backward by the force, landing hard on the dusty ground. Jin stands in the ruined doorway, his powerful kick still held in the air. His bare foot lands firmly on the ground, ready for the coming fight. A low-angle view shows the remaining villagers advancing on the lone warrior. Jin's eyes are cold steel, his face a mask of grim, unshakable resolve. Filippo and his cronies stare back, their expressions a mixture of shock and rage. The apprentice lets out a crazed laugh, thrilled that his target has finally appeared. He taunts Jin, questioning why he would run away only to return now. One of his men helps the dazed Filippo to his feet, promising to kill Jin. Jin offers them a chance. Accept his demands, and he will spare their lives. The apprentice scoffs at the very idea of this wild man making demands. Jin orders them to confess their schemes and apologize for harming the girl. Filippo demands the return of the hobgoblin materials, plus compensation for his troubles. He points accusingly, ordering his men to kill the insolent wild man. A burly villager charges from Jin's blind spot, his attack clumsy and slow. Jin roars, preparing to drive his fist into the man's wide-open face. The blow connects with a sickening crunch, the man's features collapsing inward. Jin's eyes widen slightly, surprised by the devastating force of his own punch. The man's body hits the ground with a heavy thud, unmoving. The other villagers look on in horror, asking if their comrade is all right. Jin stares at his fist, contemplating the feeling of the fatal impact. Filippo screams in disbelief, asking how he could have killed a man barehanded. He decides this incredible prize, Jin himself, will be his to claim. He vows to tear Jin apart and dump his corpse in the forest. A young villager checks the body, his voice trembling as he confirms he's dead. The others shout in rage and grief, crying out that he killed Reuben. Jin's mind races with a single, stark thought. I killed him. He clenches his fist, realizing just how fragile human life truly is. He feels no shock, reasoning that his opponent was less than a monster. The girl watches from the side, a silent, terrified silhouette against the chaos. The apprentice, his face grim, orders his remaining men to ready their weapons. Jin settles into his fighting stance, flanked by 2 armed villagers. More men close in, armed with crude farming tools like scythes and pitchforks. He knows his martial arts can handle multiple opponents if he remains calm. He quickly assesses the threat. 8 men in total, only 3 with proper weapons. Still, he must be cautious. These armed villagers pose a significant danger. He plants his foot, deciding to take out the most troublesome opponent first. Filippo charges forward, his shield raised, ready to strike Jin down. The apprentice smirks, confident that his shield will protect him from the attack. He braces for a low attack, as Jin seems to rush his legs. With a murderous cry, Filippo thrusts his sword forward, aiming to kill. Jin parries the blade with his bare forearm, the steel scraping against his skin. His eyes widen as he prepares his counterattack with blinding speed. He slams a powerful kick directly into the center of the wooden shield. The kick transitions fluidly into a high, spinning axe kick aimed at Filippo's head. The apprentice can only watch in stunned terror as the foot descends. The blow lands with incredible force, his hair flying from the impact. His eyes go white as he gasps, questioning the power of the kick. He is sent flying, the shield tumbling from his grasp as he hits the ground. Jin wonders if the man understood that it was a Brazilian kick. Filippo lies on the ground, twitching and dazed from the powerful blow. Another villager charges with a spear, enraged that Jin defeated his leader. The sharp point of the spear whistles past Jin's head as he dodges. 2 spearmen attack simultaneously, trying to pin him between their weapons. One of the spearmen grits his teeth, frustrated by Jin's nimble movements. As he deals with the spearman, another villager attacks from behind with a sword. Jin's eye darts to the side, his senses tracking the new threat instantly. He ducks under the sword's swing, his body a blur of motion. He grabs the swordsman's arm, using his momentum to flip him overhead. The man lands hard on his head with a sickening thud, knocked unconscious. Jean catches a spear shaft, driving a fist into the man's gut. He stands over his defeated opponents as the last spearman stares in shock. The remaining villagers are frozen with fear, calling him a coward. Jean knows they are just one step away from losing their will to fight. A villager with a hoe curses Jean, vowing to take him as a sacrifice. Jean lets out a primal roar, his body coiled and ready for the final assault. He catches the shaft of the hoe just as it's about to strike him. The villager struggles, telling him to let go, but Jean yanks him off balance. Jean prepares to strike, intending to punch deeper and harder than before. The sound of his fist striking flesh echoes through the tense yard. He delivers a perfect straight punch, knocking the last fighter out cold. He stands over the unconscious man, his expression grim and focused. His bloody fist is shown in close-up, the result of his brutal victory. The remaining villagers cry out in terror, utterly broken by the display. One of them falls to his knees and vomits, his courage completely gone. Another turns and flees into the night, screaming in pure, unadulterated terror. He runs, calling Jean a monster, a creature of inhuman strength. Jean thinks he has finally dealt with Filippo and his cronies. An older man stumbles into the yard, crying out for his son, Filippo. The man, Hergalt, rushes to his son's side, cradling his unconscious form. He turns his gaze to Jean, his body shaking with a mixture of grief and rage. His eyes are wide with madness as he screams, asking if Jean killed his son. Jean glares back, asking if the man is the one responsible for this mess. Hergalt's face contorts with hate as he points and orders someone to kill the girl. A massive, armored leg steps into the frame with a heavy, metallic thud. Hergalt declares that he has been feeding this warrior for this very moment. The knight's armored boot grinds into the dirt as he acknowledges his orders. His armored fist clenches. He was taken in after being exiled by his own lord. He declares that now is the time to repay the debt he owes Hergalt. The knight stands, his great sword held ready, vowing to make Jean rust on his blade. Jean faces his new opponent, recognizing the formidable challenge of plate armor. On a grassy battlefield, Nozaki Jean faces a fully armored knight. He nervously assesses his opponent, wondering what his first move should be. This knight is no mere thug. His perfect stance has no openings. A battle of attrition would be ideal, but this is enemy territory. In the background, the village chief orders his men to recapture the girl. Jin's anger flares as he remembers the chief's cruel, murderous commands. He exhales slowly, forcing his rage down and his mind into focus. With a deep, centering breath, he prepares himself for the coming fight. He settles into his stance, his body now perfectly calm and ready. All right, he thinks to himself with grim satisfaction, I'm calm now. He knows that rushing will only help his enemy. He must observe. He must not miss even the smallest detail, the most trivial clue. The knight finally moves, his armored boot crunching on the dirt. In that single step, Jin's sharp eyes detect a subtle imperfection. The knight's shifting weight is strange. He seems to be favoring his right leg. It's a familiar flaw, reminding him of his own past meniscus injury. He recalls the grueling rehabilitation and the vital importance of a healthy knee. If that's the case, he thinks, a desperate plan forming in his mind. The knight plants his foot, preparing to lunge forward with his blade. He thrusts his sword, but Jean ducks beneath the whistling steel with ease. The blade slices harmlessly through the air where his head had just been. He realizes with a jolt that a perfect knee would have made that blow fatal. As the knight recovers, Jean prepares to dive inside his opponent's guard. The knight raises his sword to block, but Jin's target isn't his torso. My target, Jean thinks, his gaze locked on the knight's legs, is over here. He dives low, tackling the knight's compromised knee with his full body weight. On the ground, he locks his arms around the joint and begins to twist. He roars with effort, knowing that armor cannot strengthen the joint within. With a final, desperate heave, there's a sickening snap from the leg. The knight's helmeted head whips around, his unseen eyes wide with shock. The sound of grinding metal and breaking bone echoes in the quiet yard. He maintains his brutal hold, ensuring the fight is decisively finished. His expression is one of grim focus as he completes the technique. The overwhelming shock and pain cause the knight to lose consciousness. The impact of his armored body hitting the ground is immense. The warrior's gauntlet hand falls limply to the dirt, his body still. Jean stands over his defeated foe, panting from the explosive effort. He places a hand on the knight's helmet in a quiet, final gesture. The knight lies motionless, a heap of inert metal on the ground. He stares at his hands, panting in horror. I've killed a man. He looks around at the carnage, realizing the bloody battle is finally over. But his eyes snap to the side, his shock turning to sudden alarm. He stands over the body of a fallen villager, his gaze on the house. He reminds himself that they started this, trying to steal from and hurt him. He hears his name called and remembers the girl is still in danger. He turns to see her standing free, the ropes that bound her now gone. She is relieved to see him safe, asking how he managed to free himself. She explains that another patient bravely came and cut her ropes. She follows his gaze to the bodies of the villagers he has defeated. She tells him not to worry. She overheard the chief order her death. He tells her that now, they must flee the village without delay. With a new, steely resolve in her eyes, she asks to go with him. He is surprised by her request, asking if she is truly sure. She knows that after this, she will only be a burden to the village. He looks down, understanding the grim truth of her words. He knows the villagers will now see her only as his accomplice. She is sad, knowing his actions have cost her the only home she knew. Bowing his head, he accepts the responsibility and agrees to take her. He tells her to pack her things, insisting that he will carry it all. A moment later, he stands with a comically oversized backpack. He turns to her, a weary but determined look on his face. Let's go. They take one last look at the village rooftops before turning away. His face is set, ready for the uncertainty of the road ahead. She stands beside him, her back turned on her former life. Her profile is determined, her gaze fixed on the future. She turns to him, a radiant smile breaking through her fear. Let's go. He knows in that moment he will never forget the look on her face. They walk away from the village of hate, two survivors on a new path. She tells him that once they clear the forest, inns will be available. Her voice is filled with surprise as she asks him a question. She is shocked to hear his made-up story about having amnesia. He jokes that he was even mistaken for a goblin, which she playfully denies. She ponders his story, a thoughtful, curious expression on her face. He smiles, relieved by the simple, light-hearted moment between them. Suddenly, her eyes widen in horror as a new thought strikes her. Her sudden change in demeanor catches him completely by surprise. She clutches her head, overwhelmed by a sudden, panicked realization. He shouts in alarm, wondering what could have possibly upset her so much. He reflects on how strange it is to feel happy after such violence. Despite the horror they left behind, their journey together is incredibly fun. He is moved to tears by the simple joy of having a companion. She finds him strangely familiar and easy to talk to. He reminds her of someone important from her past. As night falls on their journey, sparks rise from their campfire. 3 days later, they are still camping in the wilderness. He regrets passing an inn, resigning himself to keeping watch all night. Inside their tent, the girl sleeps peacefully, trusting him completely. Alone in the darkness, he decides it's safe to check his status. He recalls her saying that people need church tools to see their levels. This means his ability to see his status is unique and must be kept secret. He quietly whispers the command, "Status open," to the empty air. A black screen appears before him, its contents making him gasp. He clamps a hand over his mouth, stunned by what he is reading. He has gained 2 powerful new skills, presence detection and concealment. But he also has a new, deeply unsettling title, New Breed of Goblin. He rages at the capricious god, certain this is some kind of cruel joke. He ponders the second title, Monster, assuming it's karma for his actions. He grimly accepts it, feeling it may be a fitting title for him now. He realizes his massive level jump came entirely from the humans he killed. He considers the dangerous implications of such rapid growth through violence. The young woman looks at Jean, her eyes wide with shock, asking if what they endured was a war. As they walk, Jean explains that leveling up in this world isn't meant to be easy. She gives a small, relieved smile, glad that such terrible things won't happen so easily. Jean reflects that there must be a system preventing people from gaining experience by killing their own kind. She clasps her hands in prayer, murmuring that her God is a merciful one. She explains that it is safer to hunt monsters, which is why the other races constantly fight each other. She turns back to Jean, who has stopped walking, and asks what's wrong. With his head bowed, Jean remains frozen as she asks if he is feeling unwell. A close-up shows his hand clenched into a tight, trembling fist at his side. His face is cast in shadow, his eyes wide with a dawning and profound horror. The ghastly realization hits him. He gained experience from killing humans, which shouldn't be possible. His shadow stretches into a monstrous, inhuman shape as he questions what he has become. The word monster fills his mind, a terrifying and undeniable conclusion about his new nature. He looks to the sky, his thoughts a silent, desperate plea to the God who sent him here. With a pained expression, he thinks to himself that this cosmic joke is not funny at all. They find refuge for the night at a roadside inn, marked by a sign with a swan. Lying awake, Jean realizes he is not human, but something else that only looks the part. Fear grips him. If this truth is ever discovered, he will be executed as a dangerous creature. He is jolted from his dark thoughts by a sudden, sharp yelp from the next room. A new chapter begins. Tough boy. Adventurers are tough, as the pair walk a lonely road. He has accidentally walked in on the girl, who is undressed and demands he leave at once. As he retreats, she throws a wet cloth that smacks him, scolding him for not waiting. Blushing with anger, she calls him ridiculous, while he stammers that he was lost in thought. The scene settles on the quiet, rustic exterior of the stone and timber inn. At dinner, she happily notes that they will finally reach the city of Rockcliffe tomorrow. They clink their heavy mugs together, sharing an early toast to the safety of their journey. The table is set with a simple but hearty meal of stew and beans. She takes a spoonful of stew, her expression one of pleasant surprise at the taste. A warm, happy smile spreads across her face as she savors the simple food. Jean watches her, thinking that her healthy appetite is unchanged and he is glad their journey is ending. She continues to eat with gusto, her cheeks full as she chews happily. He watches her with a gentle smile, vowing to himself not to fall for her any further. His internal thoughts are grim. He believes staying with her would only bring her unhappiness. He concludes that he fell for her and gave up on her, all on his own. The next day, her hand shoots out, pointing dramatically towards the horizon. In the distance, the formidable stone walls of a great city rise from the rocky landscape. She turns to him excitedly, exclaiming that she can see it, calling him Goblin San. Jin's face lights up with awe and excitement as he shouts the city's name. Rockcliffe. They make their way towards the massive city, a bastion of civilization in the wilderness. Approaching the gates, they join the end of a long queue of travelers and merchants. Jean notes the city's imposing presence, and she explains it now thrives as a trade hub. A stern guard calls for the next in line, and she announces that it is their turn. The guard demands their travel permit, while Jean stands behind her, his face hidden and tense. Panic begins to set in as Jean worries he will be identified as a wanted man. She calmly presents a letter, which the guard recognizes as being from an acquaintance of Lord Clare. The guards, now deferential, wave them through the gate, wishing them well. Inside, Jean is stunned they entered so easily, realizing this Lord Clare must be important. She explains that a skilled pharmacist like her is a rare asset worth the Lord's protection. Jean understands the political maneuvering at play as she confidently leads him into the city. They walk down a bustling main street, flanked by impressive half-timbered buildings. Overwhelmed by the sheer number of people, Jean nervously scans the crowded street. He observes the vibrant energy of the market, a merchant loudly hawking his wares. He thinks that with so many diverse people, his own strange appearance might not stand out. She calls back to him, telling him to hurry up as he lags behind, lost in the sights. He chides himself for acting like a wide-eyed tourist and quickly follows her. A stone wall and the corner of a building mark their progress through the city. They finally arrive at a large, well-maintained house on a quiet cobblestone street. A young woman with long, dark hair bids a kind farewell to an elderly man. The woman turns, her expression curious as she notices their arrival. Cray waves enthusiastically as she and Jean approach the house. Cray shouts with joy, recognizing the woman as her older sister, Belle. The two sisters, reunited at last, share a tight, emotional embrace. Belle holds her younger sister, surprised by her sudden appearance, but clearly overjoyed. Belle's gaze shifts over Cray's shoulder, her eyes focusing on the stranger with her. She sees Jean standing awkwardly nearby, wondering what has brought them here. The three of them stand together as Cray quickly explains their harrowing journey. Belle listens intently, her expression hardening as she understands the danger they were in. She turns to Jean, her voice filled with sincere gratitude for bringing her sister to safety. She puts a protective arm around Cray, telling her to come inside and rest from her ordeal. Cray looks back over her shoulder with a bright smile, inviting Goblin San to join them. Jean remains standing in the courtyard as the sisters look back, waiting for him to follow. He takes a single, decisive step backward, the sound echoing on the cobblestones. Cray's welcoming smile is on full display. Her smile instantly vanishes, replaced by a look of shock and utter confusion. Jean looks at her, his face grim, and states that this is as far as he goes. Cray is speechless, unable to comprehend his sudden decision to leave. Belle looks back at him, her expression unreadable and serious. Her face hardens as she warns him that the man he killed was a vassal of the city's ruler. Jean gives her a grim nod, thanking her for the crucial warning. Cray protests from the doorway, telling her sister not to say such things. She tells Jean that Belle is only saying it out of concern for his safety. Jean looks at Cray one last time, his voice soft as he tells her to take care. She looks down, her face flushing as she hides her impending tears in her cloak. Looking up with a brilliant, tearful smile, she wishes him well in return. He turns and walks away, a solitary figure leaving the two sisters behind. The sky above the city's rooftops seems vast and empty. Jean sits alone on the edge of a fountain, the weight of his solitude returning. He rises to his feet, his posture radiating a newfound determination. He slaps his own cheeks, snapping himself out of his melancholy. He tells himself not to get depressed. His quest for survival is still ongoing. He approaches a local man, smoking a pipe, and humbly asks for directions. His rough-hewn boots walk with purpose on the city's cobblestone streets. He knows he should leave, but first, he needs to earn money to survive. His resolve hardens, and he makes a decision. He will become an adventurer in this city. He spots a familiar-looking sign hanging from a nearby building and knows he has found his destination. It's the classic fantasy trope he'd read about so many times, the Adventurers Guild. He stands before the guild's massive, arched wooden doors, a silent figure ready for a new start. He takes a single, deep, steadying breath before entering. Pushing the heavy door open, he steels himself, saying, "Here I go." His hand rests on the door, marking the threshold of his new life. Chapter 2 begins now. A dramatic flash of light marks the beginning of a new chapter. Jean muses that his new life will surely begin like a classic RPG. He imagines a beautiful receptionist welcoming him to the Adventurers Guild. But reality is a gruff, bored-looking man with a large nose. The man snaps at Jean, asking why he's staring so intently. He gruffly asks if Jean is here to register and tells him to sign. The clerk grumbles that the only thing that matters is getting the job done. Jean observes the guild hall, noting it looks just like a common tavern. He realizes all the patrons are adventurers, a rough-looking assembly. At a nearby table, a man named Al notes the newcomer is watching them. Al quietly tells his companion not to let his guard down around him. He asks his quiet friend, Kimon, for his opinion on the stranger. Kimon, his face obscured by his shaggy hair, pauses his meal. He looks up with a blank expression and gives a simple, non-committal yeah. Al decides that he doesn't like the look of this new person. A hulking giant, Gons, notices Jin's stare and wonders what he wants. His hand tightens on his mug. He thinks the newcomer is a cheeky bastard. Al sighs, sensing trouble, and tells Gons to keep his temper in check. Gons hefts his massive axe and roars that he is going to crush Jean. The story flashes back to a roadside inn, marked by its swan sign. Jean lies awake, tormented by the fact he is no longer considered human. He fears that if his secret is discovered, he will be executed. His dark thoughts are shattered by a sudden yelp from the next room. He has accidentally walked in on Cray bathing. She demands he leave. She scolds him for not knocking, throwing a wet cloth at his head. Flustered and angry, she mutters about him being lost in his thoughts. Later that evening, they sit together in the quiet common room. Cray happily mentions that they will finally arrive in Rockcliffe tomorrow. They raise their mugs in a premature toast to their safe journey. A simple meal of hearty stew and beans sits on the table. Jean watches as Cray takes a bite, clearly enjoying the food. She smiles, her cheeks full, savoring the delicious meal. He thinks she eats with such gusto, glad their journey is almost over. She continues to munch away happily, completely content. He makes a silent vow that he won't let her become any more attached. He resolves that staying with her would only bring her unhappiness. It was a selfish decision he made for what he believed was her sake. The next day, Cray excitedly points ahead, having spotted their destination. Jean looks on in awe, exclaiming that it must be the city of Rockcliffe. They approach the formidable walled city, a massive bastion of civilization. They join the long line of travelers waiting to enter the gates. Jean notes its impressive defenses, while Cray explains it's now a trade hub. A guard at the gate shouts for the next person in line. Cray steps forward, telling the guards she has a letter for passage. Jean panics, worried he might be a wanted man from the village. The guard recognizes the name on the letter, an acquaintance of Lord Clare. The guards wave them through the gates, telling them to be careful. Jean is surprised they got in so easily. Cray explains who Clare is. She reveals Clare is the adopted daughter of the city's lord, Margrave Megan. Jean understands. Cray urges him to follow her, as this is the way. They walk through the bustling streets of the impressive medieval city. Jean, overwhelmed by the crowds, looks around nervously. A vendor shouts a welcome as Jean takes in the city's vibrant energy. He sees the diverse population, thinking he shouldn't stand out too much. Cray calls out to him, noticing that he is lagging behind her. He chides himself for acting like a country bumpkin and hurries to catch up. They arrive at a house, where Cray and another woman embrace tearfully. The woman, Belle, asks what happened, surprised by her sister's sudden arrival. Belle's eyes narrow as she takes in the entire situation. Jean awkwardly greets them, wondering what is going on between the sisters. In the courtyard, Cray explains the entire harrowing ordeal to her sister. Belle listens intently, her expression serious as she understands the danger. She turns to Jean, thanking him for bringing her sister all this way. Belle tells Cray she must be tired and invites her inside the house to rest. Cray turns with a smile and invites Jean to come inside as well. Jean remains standing still. His duty is done. Cray questions his hesitation. He plants his foot firmly on the ground, his decision made. Cray's inviting smile fades as she senses his unspoken intent. Her expression shifts to one of shock and utter confusion. Jean announces that this is as far as his journey with her goes. Cray is stunned, unable to believe that he is leaving her now. Belle watches the scene unfold silently, her expression unreadable. Belle warns Jean that the man he killed was noble-born, so he must be careful. Jean gives a curt nod, thanking her for the crucial warning. Belle shakes her head, telling a distraught Cray not to stop him from leaving. She explains that it is for his own good, asking if she understands. Jean gives Cray one last look, simply telling her to be well. Back in the present, Gans glares at Jean, demanding to know what he's staring at. He snarls at Jin's cheeky expression, ready for a fight. The confrontation begins, Gans poised to attack, as Jean stands his ground. Gans grips his axe, muttering that the bastard is getting on his nerves. Jean realizes he stared too obviously. Al tells Gans to take it outside. Jean panics, knowing a fight now would be a terrible idea. Gans accepts the challenge, asking if Jean is really going to fight. Jean prepares his own special finishing move, one of utter submission. He bows deeply, offering a sudden and profuse apology for staring. Gans is frozen in place, completely stunned by the bizarre apology. The giant can only stammer in confusion, his anger completely gone. Jean launches into a stream of flattery about Gans's incredible, powerful aura. Al watches with a smirk, remarking on the impressive display of groveling. Jean internally asks, how about that? Confident no one can resist his flattery. Gans is still annoyed by the smooth talk, but his aggression has vanished. For a moment, Jean worries his flattery won't work on a veteran adventurer. But Gans blushes, admitting that the compliments are extremely effective. Jean grins triumphantly, thinking to himself that this guy is too simple. An hour later, Jean is passed out on a bench in the guild. Gans leaves with a woman on each arm, boasting about his impressive aura. Al congratulates Jean, impressed by how he handled their powerful general. He formally introduces himself as Al, offering his friendship. Jean accepts, but notices Al's eyes aren't smiling. He's still being watched. Al studies the strange newcomer, thinking this man is sharp and he must be careful. Al explains his unusual name comes from his grandmother, a slave from a distant land. Jean reflects on his own past, remembering that Nozaki Jean died coming to this world. Kimon quietly adds that his sister was also sold into slavery. Al introduces the quiet Kimon, telling Jean not to mind his reserved nature. Jean awkwardly offers a formal greeting to his new and troubled companions. Al watches Gans disappear with two women, wondering what that was about. Eager to learn, Jean asks Al if he can teach him about the local geography. Jean sheepishly admits he knows nothing of the world, having never left his small village. Al agrees, ready to give the newcomer his first lesson about their world. Unrolling a large map, Al points out their location, the city of Rockcliffe. Jean leans in, thrilled by the sight, thinking this is getting very exciting. Al indicates the lands to the north, belonging to the Holy Kingdom of Fariste. He continues the lesson, pointing out the major kingdoms in every direction. Jean gestures to a vast, untamed territory, asking what lies there. Al describes the colossal Megad Empire, a good place for commoners to live. The conversation shifts to the lawless, untamed wilderness between the kingdoms. Al grins, explaining that the beasts in that frontier are incredibly powerful. Jin's eyes widen at the thought of a monster's paradise, eager to go someday. The three adventurers continue their serious discussion around the table. As the night ends, Al and Kimon get up to leave the tavern. Al calls back to Jean, who is heading up the inn's wooden staircase. With a sincere smile, Al says he's taken a liking to Jean. Jean watches them go, a thoughtful, unreadable expression on his face. He walks up the stairs alone, the sound of his footsteps echoing softly. He enters his room, the door latch clicking shut, sealing him in solitude. His meager funds, a few coins from a pouch, are spilled onto the bed. Jean realizes his money is almost gone, and he must find a way to earn more. A memory of that same pouch of coins flashes in his mind. He recalls trying to press the money into Cray's hand before he left. He had insisted she take it, arguing that he could survive by camping. Cray had refused, questioning why he felt the need to push himself so hard. He remembers her stubborn look as she denied his offer of charity. The memory ends with her playful smile, promising to repay him double. Back in the present, Jean is overcome by a profound and crushing loneliness. He buries his face in his pillow, trying to silence the turmoil in his mind. The next morning begins with a view of the timber-framed inn. At a stone well, Jean tries to wash away his despair with cold water. He splashes his face, telling himself he is too vulnerable to act alone. His eyes burn with new resolve. He knows what he must do to succeed. The outdoor tables of the tavern sit empty in the early morning light. Al and Gons are surprised by Jin's sudden, determined appearance. Jean stands before them and formally asks to be let into their party. He declares his ambition to become a great adventurer, just like Gons. Gons can only stare, completely taken aback by the bold request. His shock turns to suspicion as he asks if Jean intends to be a freeloader. Jin's eyes are wide with a desperate, almost manic intensity. Al calmly interjects, noting that both Jean and Gons are from the sticks. He begins his lecture, asking Jean if he understands the concept of base values. A chart illustrates the different innate stats of an adventurer versus a merchant. Al explains that these base values determine one's ultimate potential. Jean listens intently, asking how these crucial stats are decided. A close-up on Al's eye reveals the gravity of the answer he is about to give. Jin's eye widens in shock as he learns they are determined by innate physique. Al notes that, except for Kimmin, everyone in the guild is taller than Jean. Gons proudly proclaims that they are rank 6, the strongest party in Rockcliffe. Al warns Jean that without a special talent, there is no place for him. Unwilling to give up, Jean asks what a special talent is. The three men sit at the table, the mood now serious and tense. Al explains that skills, beyond stats, can also serve as a weapon. He reveals that scout skills like presence detection are exceptionally rare and valuable. Noticing Jean has zoned out, Al and Gons look at him with concern. Jean breaks his silence, stunning them by revealing he has 2 scout skills. A shout of disbelief echoes from the tavern, heard from the rooftops. Al and Gons are rendered completely speechless by Jin's claim. Al insists that such skills can't be proven with words, only by feeling. Gons grins, his expression a mix of doubt and challenge, demanding a demonstration. They arrive at an armorer's shop for what becomes a blinding spectacle. Inside, Kimmin thoughtfully inspects the wares, playing his part in the plan. The massive Gons looms over the shopkeeper, his presence a silent threat. Al then swoops in, his angelic smile masking his demonic haggling tactics. The weeping shopkeeper finally relents, calling them thieves as they leave. Jean proudly puts on his new brigandine and arm guards, a hard-won prize. Outside, the party gathers, looking at Jean in his new adventuring gear. Jean thanks them for their help in preparing for his party initiation test. He clenches his fist, vowing that he will absolutely pass the test. Gons claps him hard on the back, telling him not to get ahead of himself. He delivers a chilling warning. If Jean fails, he'll take the gear from his corpse. That night, Jean stands alone, steeling himself for the test to come. He grits his teeth, accepting the brutal reality of this world and welcoming the challenge. The next day, the party of 4 departs from the gates of Rockcliffe. They are small figures trekking through a vast and barren rocky landscape. The 4 adventurers walk with purpose: the giant, the swordsman, the archer, and the martial artist. Gons's face is set with a grim, warrior's determination. Ael's expression is calm and focused, his eyes scanning the path ahead. Kimmin's gaze is steady, his face partially obscured by his deep hood. Jean admits to himself that the pressure of the test kept him awake all night. The party ventures deeper into the wilderness under a wide, open sky. Al pauses their journey to consult the details of the quest parchment. The request is simple: subjugate the gray wolves that are attacking local livestock. Jean observes that the quest seems like a good one for a day trip. He quietly wonders why such a straightforward job was still available. Al shares his unease, finding it strange that the request was left over. He explains this was the only quest on the board when Gons went to check. Al reminds them that gray wolves are known to hunt in packs of 5 to 10. Jean gulps, the reality of facing such a large pack sinking in. His sharp eye spots something on the horizon. He announces that he can see the village, the site of his first official quest. Their arrival is met with a grim scene, the mauled carcass of a farm animal. A grieving villager informs them that the wolves had attacked again that very morning. Nozaki Jean observes the village's grim atmosphere, noting this is the third incident this month. The tension is palpable, and he admits it's starting to get on his nerves. A small, sad girl named Mia quietly calls out to her weary grandfather. With her eyes squeezed shut, she asks if a proper grave has been made. Her grandfather comforts her, explaining her beloved sheep, Meru, was killed that morning. As the girl breaks into sobs, Jean watches on with a somber expression. The village elder formally pleads with the adventurers for their help. He begs them to save his village, which faces certain ruin otherwise. Al calmly replies, asking the elder to first explain the situation in detail. The elder leads Al away for a private discussion, telling the others to wait. Gons tells his comrades that he leaves the negotiations to Al. He stands ready to refuse the job if the terms are not to his liking. Gons instructs Jean that they are on watch and to stay alert for any trouble. He warns Jean to absolutely not let his guard down. The giant warrior watches the villagers with a stern, focused gaze. A villager wonders why the adventurers are so guarded when everyone seems so friendly. Al returns, asking Jean why he's making such a strange, concerned face. He reports that there's no problem. They will head out to hunt the monsters. The beasts, he explains, are coming from the forest to the east. As the party departs, Jean looks back at the hopeful villagers seeing them off. Al tells Jean to remember this sight. He explains that clients sometimes lie to get a cheaper price for a dangerous quest. They can't afford to fall for such tricks. He states that an adventurer's first duty is to protect their own life. Jean listens intently, absorbing the harsh lesson of his new profession. He reflects on Al's cynical but necessary wisdom. The party ventures toward the vast, dense forest. They stand at the edge of the dark woods, a formidable wall of trees. Jean thinks to himself that the real show is about to begin. Gons turns to him, giving him his orders as the party scout. He commands Jean to enter the forest and find the gray wolf den. Al adds that he must always use his presence concealment skill. He warns that Jean must be the one to find the wolves first. Kimmin simply tells Jean to go. Al and Kimmin watch as Jean disappears into the tall grass. Kimmin issues a challenge, telling Jean to show him what he's capable of. Al watches with a confident, knowing smirk. Jean is grateful for the words from his predecessor, Kimmin. His new role frees Kimmin from his former scouting duties. Jean walks alone between the massive trunks of ancient trees. He looks up at the canopy, thinking it's been a while since he was in a forest. He feels a strange sense of unease, as if he's in someone else's home. He reasons that a wolf-type monster will surely have a keen sense of smell. He scolds himself for his strange thoughts, yelling that a forest isn't a house. His first priority is to erase his scent using the local plants. He quickly finds a patch of familiar, broad-leafed herbs. He vigorously rubs the crushed leaves over his armor and clothing. He recalls that these mint-like plants were a great help in his first forest. He makes a mental note to gather some for Gons and the others later. With his scent successfully masked, he prepares to begin his search. He focuses his mind, honing his senses to deploy his detection skill. The world becomes a void, filled only with the glowing orbs of life force. He recalls Al's report that the wolves travel in packs of 5 to 10. He knows he must get close to find his target within the skill's effective range. He soon discovers the tracks of large animals, and more than just one or two. He follows the trail cautiously, his eyes scanning the dense undergrowth. He freezes, his senses screaming a warning of something nearby. His eyes widen in shock as he finally spots his quarry. Two large, vicious wolves stand guard near the mouth of a dark cave. Found them. He thinks his mission a success. He returns to the party, who now observe the cave from a safe distance. Gons clenches his fist tightly in anticipation of the fight. With a wide grin, he tells Jean that he did a good job. Kimmin quietly asks Al for their plan of attack. Al asks Jean if he's sure there are 5 enemies, and Jean suddenly looks uncertain. With a confident snap of his fingers, Al decides on a plan. He declares they'll show their true power, so the newcomer isn't unimpressed. He tells Jean to sit back and watch from the front row seats. Al and Gons stealthily make their way toward the cave entrance. Al explains they will approach from downwind, attacking the moment they are noticed. Jean watches intently from the safety of the bushes. As the wolves emerge, he raises his hand and shouts the signal. He yells Kimmin's name, initiating the ambush. From the shadows, Kimmin draws his bow, his aim true. The first wolf leaps from the cave mouth. It is met mid-air by an arrow that strikes it squarely in the neck. The beast crashes to the ground, its charge brutally cut short. As the second wolf emerges, Gons moves to intercept it. He lets out a deafening, furious battle cry. With a single, mighty swing, his axe cleaves the wolf's skull. Gons prepares to strike again as 2 more wolves charge forward. He fells another with a powerful, sweeping blow from his axe. Jean is stunned, exclaiming that Gons took down 2 beasts with 2 strikes. A wolf notes that Gons' large swings leave him vulnerable. Al expertly steps in, blocking the wolf's lunge with his shield. He stands firm, protecting his comrade's flank. Jean realizes that Al's agile defense perfectly complements Gons' overwhelming power. An arrow from Kimmin strikes another wolf precisely in the eye. The party works in perfect sync, chipping away at the enemy's mobility. Gon stands over a wounded wolf, preparing to deliver the final blow. He brings his axe down with a mighty crash, finishing the beast. The 2 warriors stand back to back, a picture of deadly cooperation. Amazing, Jean whispers, utterly in awe of their skill. He understands now why they are called Rockcliffe's strongest party. An overhead view shows the 5 wolf carcasses littering the battlefield. Jean is astonished, thinking they defeated 5 monsters in an instant. Gons, a dead wolf slung over his shoulder, asks why he's spacing out. He barks at the newcomer to get to work. The job isn't over yet. They spend the evening celebrating with the grateful villagers. Mia gives him a radiant smile, simply saying thank you. With a delicious morning drink, Jean reflects on his successful debut. He had safely overcome his first battle as an adventurer. He gazes out from Rockcliffe's walls at the vast, endless world. The following day, he returned to the Rockcliffe Adventurers Guild. His new party members, Gons and Kimmin, waited with him. Jean beamed with the pride of a successful first mission. Al appeared, announcing that Yajin's long-awaited reward was ready. With a jingle of coin, Jean received his pay, shouting thanks. He asked if it was enough, but it would last a week. Gons insisted he take it, crediting him for their victory. Al told him to enjoy the day off before work resumed. His new comrades dispersed, leaving him suddenly and utterly alone. He stood alone, wondering what to do with his newfound freedom. He recalled the life-threatening nature of adventuring and its immense pressure. He needed a way to unwind, but his stomach had other ideas. He stood in a stupor, the weight of his new life pressing down. A magnificent roasted bird was placed before him with a flourish. He clasped his hands in thanks, ready to devour the feast. He tore into the meat with a primal, unrestrained hunger. The tavern keeper was shocked at the expensive order from a newcomer. The taste was incomparable to anything he'd eaten in this world. He decided then to invest in food. His body was his capital. Al noted how rare it was for an adventurer to pursue food. A shopkeeper warned him that procuring such fine ingredients was difficult. Monsters and taxes made fresh vegetables and spices rare commodities. The shopkeeper encouraged him to earn well if he wanted to eat well. So, he took matters into his own hands, hunting for himself. He acted as the lure, drawing a massive bird-like creature. His party lay in wait, perfectly positioned for the ambush. Al, the party's leader, watched for the opportune moment to strike. Seeing his chance, he roared the command for Kimin to attack. The silent archer, Kimin, drew back his bow with deadly focus. His fingers released the string, sending the arrow flying true. The arrow struck the beast's eye, a perfect, crippling shot. Jean expertly guided the wounded creature towards the next trap. He ran past Gons, who stood ready to deliver the final blow. With a mighty swing, Gons's axe finished the beast for good. Since that first mission, their teamwork had become second nature. He had become a great decoy, making their hunts an easy win. Back at the guild, he prepared another magnificent feast for them. Al teased him, asking if all his earnings went to food. Jean lectured them on the importance of a balanced, healthy diet. Gons found him strange, but listened with an amused smile. Soon, nothing was left but a clean plate and full bellies. Later, Gons challenged him to a rowdy game of numbers. Jean was puzzled by Gons's strange limitation of only 10. Gons angrily insisted that 10 fingers meant the count stopped there. Jean slyly pointed out that one's toes could also be used. The giant was stunned into silence, realizing his mistake too late. With dawning comprehension, Gons considered his own foot. He jokingly told Jean to practice so he could count them. Full and content, Jean let out a satisfied burp. He looked back at the guild, feeling he finally belonged. He had grown accustomed to his new life in Rockcliffe. But one day, a familiar quest appeared, hunting gray wolves. Al confirmed the details were identical to their first mission. Gons was confident, remembering their previous easy victory. At the village, the elder welcomed them with open arms. It was another small, isolated village nestled in the wilderness. Al began to discuss the details of the quest with him. The rest of the party waited, the situation feeling routine. Jean noted how similar it was, wondering about the first village. Soon, they stood at the edge of the forest, ready. Al, Kimin, and Gons waited for his report from scouting. Gons was the first to spot his returning figure. Jean emerged from the dense woods, running toward his comrades. He reported that he had found the den, but something was wrong. The den was in a dense thicket, impossible for a direct assault. He proposed luring them to an open clearing he had found. Al immediately shot down the plan, calling it far too dangerous. But Jean insisted he could do it, asking them to trust him. Jean argued that being the decoy was the scout's most important job. After a tense moment, Al finally, reluctantly, agreed to the plan. Al's final order was simple. He must not die. He prepared the bait, slitting the throat of a small rabbit. Its dark blood splattered onto the ground, creating a scent trail. He swung the carcass, laying a trail of blood from the cave. Hiding, he watched the cave, his senses on high alert. His skill revealed 5 distinct life forces stirring within the darkness. The glowing orbs began to move, taking the bait. He tensed as he sensed their approach, announcing their arrival. A strange, horned beast burst from the cave with a snarl. It immediately locked its eyes on him, its target acquired. With a determined look, Jean turned and began the desperate chase. The entire pack of horned creatures gave chase through the woods. He gritted his teeth, pushing himself to his absolute physical limit. He became a blur of motion, a desperate flight for survival. He led the pack on a winding chase through the dense forest. He burst into the clearing, the pack right behind him. His comrades were in position, weapons drawn and ready for battle. Gons's face was a mask of grim, warrior's determination. Kimin's visible eye was narrowed with a cold, deadly focus. Al's expression was one of sharp, confident command. The sudden silence of the forest was broken by startled birds. Al sensed something was amiss. The wolves were taking too long. Suddenly, Jean burst from the tree-line, running at full speed. He sprinted past Al, who stood ready with his sword and shield. He screamed a warning, telling them to prepare for the attack. Al and Gons grinned, eager to meet the oncoming threat. The first of the horned beasts crashed into the clearing. With deadly focus, Kimon draws his bow, his eyes fixed on his target. An arrow whistles through the air, striking a horned wolf in the neck. Al lets out a fierce battle cry, his shield held high and ready. He expertly parries a lunging wolf with a swift flick of his sword. From above, the clearing becomes a chaotic dance of adventurers and monsters. With a mighty roar, Gons winds up for a devastating two-handed swing. His massive axe descends in a blur, cleaving a wolf's head from its body. A grim smile touches Jin's lips. He thinks they can win this. Suddenly, his expression freezes, his eyes widening in shock. A cold sweat breaks as he senses a new, terrifying presence approaching. He whips his head around, his gaze fixed on the dense forest tree line. His presence detection reveals a swarm of glowing life forces in the dark. His face contorts in pure horror at the sight of the approaching horde. He wonders how there can be more gray wolves than the 5 expected. He screams a desperate warning to Gons that new enemies are coming. Gons demands to know what he means, while Al asks for their numbers. Al's eyes narrow, sensing a single, overwhelmingly powerful presence among them. Jin's mental map shows one massive orb of power, a terrifying alpha. A title page shows a bloodied Jin, announcing a desperate, life-or-death struggle. He stands alone, facing the spectral lights, wondering what to do. He knows the enemy is upon them. If they are to run, it must be now. Al urges a tactical retreat, but Gons refuses to abandon the villagers. Jin clenches his fist, torn between logic and his overwhelming guilt. He turns and charges, but not away from the fight. He thinks to himself that this entire disaster is his own mistake. He roars that he will never be able to forgive himself for this. He plunges back into the fray, yelling for Al to provide support. He squares off against a horned wolf, his fists raised in a fighting stance. He notes that he has never fought a 4-legged monster before. He unleashes a powerful kick, but the wolf dodges with startling speed. He grits his teeth, shocked by the creature's incredibly fast reactions. The beast flows under his attack, a blur of fur and muscle. It lunges for his groin, a vulnerable and potentially fatal target. He is thrown to the ground with a sharp grunt of pain. The wolf is on him instantly, its fangs sinking into his thigh. He scrambles back to his feet, narrowly avoiding another savage bite. He realizes his predictions were too naive. His attacks must be faster. He faces the circling wolf, his focus absolute and his breathing steady. His eyes narrow to slits, spotting a momentary opening in its defense. The wolf's claws dig into the earth as it prepares to pounce. He resolves to use his speed, putting his entire body weight behind the blow. He explodes forward, his punch traveling the shortest possible distance. The sound of cracking bone echoes as his fist connects with the wolf's neck. He stands over the fallen beast, its life extinguished in an instant. He realizes that while fast, the creature was not very durable. He glances over his shoulder, seeing that 2 of the wolves still remain. Gons's axe comes down in a brutal arc, finishing off another beast. Al, standing over his own kill, asks if Jin is finished on his end. Jin tells him it's time for them to fall back and regroup. Al suddenly calls out his name, his voice filled with alarm. Jin's eyes widen in horror. He senses that they were too late. A massive pack of horned wolves emerges from the forest tree line. Al and Jin can only stare, frozen by the sight of the overwhelming horde. Jin notes that one wolf is larger, its presence an aura of pure terror. Al realizes with dread that a different, superior breed is mixed in the pack. A close-up reveals the massive, dagger-like fangs of the alpha wolf. The alpha throws its head back and lets out a bone-chilling howl. The entire pack answers its leader's call with a unified, deafening roar. Jin draws the poisoned dagger from his belt, the sheath making a sharp sound. He readies himself, knowing the true, desperate battle is about to begin. The horde surges forward, a living tide of snarling maws and sharp claws. Gons clicks his tongue in frustration at the impossible odds. He roars that they have no choice but to fight with all their might. Jean watches the charge, his expression grim and utterly determined. The alpha wolf hangs back, observing the battle from a safe distance. Gons braces himself for the impact of the oncoming charge. Al prepares his sword and shield, ready to meet the attack head-on. Kimon stands his ground, his twin daggers held at the ready. Jean faces two of the charging wolves, his own knife held before him. One of the wolves snarls, its maw wide and drooling with saliva. Jean dodges a lunge, the wolf's claws tearing up the grass beside him. Another wolf leaps, its fangs aimed directly for his throat. He grits his teeth in frustration, knowing he cannot dodge them all. The wolf's fangs sink deep into his unprotected forearm. He cries out in pain as he is dragged down to the ground. He is instantly swarmed, a wolf leaping onto his back, its claws digging deep. Another wolf leaps, its fangs aimed for his throat. He grits his teeth, realizing he can't dodge them all. The wolf's fangs sink deep into his forearm. He cries out in pain as he is dragged to the ground. The pack descends upon him, a whirlwind of claws and teeth. A wolf stands beside him, its gaze cold, intelligent, and predatory. Jean thinks that this creature is far more dangerous than the others. He realizes the wolves are coordinating, trying to kill him. He understands their movements are different from any gray wolf he has seen. He wonders if the alpha is the reason for their intelligence. A wolf's claws tear deep, bloody gashes into his arm. Another bites down hard on his bicep, its teeth grinding on bone. He knows that staying on the defensive will only lead to his death. He imagines being eaten alive, his second chance at life ending in agony. His eyes burn with resolve. He will survive and kill every last one. He rises to his feet, facing down a charging wolf, his stance ready. He prepares to counterattack, steeling himself to take a hit. He meets the wolf's lunge head-on, his knife held high. The beast's maw is wide, its teeth like rows of sharp daggers. He blocks the bite with his arm, bracing for the crushing impact. In the same motion, he drives his dagger deep into the wolf's eye. Ripping the blade free, he sends a spray of black blood into the air. Another wolf lunges, its jaws snapping shut on his arm. It bites down hard, its teeth sinking deep into his already wounded flesh. Nozaki Jin's face is a mask of grim, focused determination. With a powerful grunt, he brings his knife down in a vicious overhand strike. His hands grip the hilt of his weapon with bone-white intensity. A horned wolf dodges, while another sinks its fangs into his leg. The creature's powerful jaws clamp down hard on Jin's hand. A clawed paw rakes his face, sending his knife flying from his grasp. Disarmed, he stumbles back, clutching his bleeding face in the clearing. His left eye is swollen shut, but his gaze remains unbroken and defiant. He faces the beast, knowing his impaired vision is a grave disadvantage. He thinks that in this state, he can't possibly match the monster's speed. An idea strikes him. He must find something, anything he can use. He recalls the small emergency pouch he sewed inside his tunic. With a grunt of effort, he rips the hidden pouch free from his clothes. He lets out a tremendous roar, a desperate, distracting battle cry. He hurls its contents, coins and spices, high into the air. A single, heavy silver coin glints as it tumbles through the sky. The ornate ogre coin lands in the grass, catching the monster's eye. Distracted by the shiny object, the wolf glances down for a fatal second. Jean explodes forward, seizing the opportunity his gambit created. His fist connects with the creature's snout with bone-shattering force. The wolf is thrown back, crashing lifelessly into the tall grass. He stands over his foe, panting, whispering that he has won. Suddenly, a massive, terrifying presence erupts directly behind him. His eyes widen in horror as he identifies the new threat, a black wolf. The massive, spined beast rears up, ready to pounce on its new prey. Its heavy paw slams down hard onto his leather-armored chest. The sheer force of the blow sends him crashing to the ground. Al screams Jin's adventurer name, Yajin, in helpless terror. Jin's eye reflects the pure horror of his impending, violent death. He shoves his hand up, desperately trying to hold back the snapping jaws. The chapter title page frames Jin's face within the beast's deadly maw. He is pinned beneath the immense weight of the monstrous black wolf. The alpha's jaws, filled with rows of teeth, loom over his face. Its sharp claws dig deep into his armor, threatening to pierce through. He grits his teeth in agony as the claws begin to pierce the metal plates. His trembling arm, now at its absolute limit, begins to give way. He knows he will die if this continues. He must think of something now. A final, suicidal gambit forms in his mind, a 1 in a million chance. He resolves to act, knowing he has no other choice but to try. The wolf opens its mouth wide for the final, killing bite. In a desperate move, Jin shoves his entire forearm deep into its throat. The beast gags, its fatal attack momentarily thwarted by the blockage. With his free hand, he fumbles inside his tunic for his secret weapon. He clutches a small, wadded ball of potent, eye-watering spices. He mentally screams for the beast to savor his expensive spice blend. He shoves the pungent spice ball directly into the wolf's nostril. The creature's head rears back in a violent, agonized sneeze. Jin's eyes narrow with focus. This is his only chance. He quickly hooks one of his legs around the creature's neck. He drives his other leg into its side, gaining crucial leverage. With a surge of pure adrenaline, he flips himself onto its back. He lands squarely on the beast, becoming a grim, determined rider. He locks his arms tightly around its thick, bristling neck. His face is a mask of bloody, desperate, and unyielding fury. The wolf lets out a choked, enraged roar, its body convulsing. It begins to buck and thrash wildly, trying to throw him off. Its powerful paws dig into the earth as it struggles for air. It leaps high into the air, a whirlwind of uncontrolled, violent motion. It slams its own body against the ground, trying to crush him. Jin vows he will not let go. One of them is going to die. The beast continues its frantic, desperate struggle for its life. Clinging on, Jin feels his own consciousness starting to fade from the strain. The world blurs around him as his vision begins to tunnel. He presses his face into its fur, his strength rapidly failing him. The wolf's powerful legs finally begin to stumble and weaken. Saliva and tears stream from its face as it slowly suffocates. Jin slumps forward, nearly unconscious, but his death grip remains locked. The last glimmer of light begins to fade from the monster's eye. Its massive eye rolls back, becoming a glassy, vacant white orb. A brief, heavy silence falls over the blood-soaked, grassy field. The colossal creature finally collapses, its struggle ended. Jin remains draped over its corpse, his fight finally over. He is utterly spent, his body limp with profound exhaustion. His blood-stained hand slowly, finally, relaxes its grip. Against all odds, he has survived the impossible encounter. An overhead view shows Jin rolling off the dead wolf's back. The dead alpha's face is frozen in a silent, agonized snarl. Jin lies on his back, his eyes wide with shock and utter relief. Spread-eagled, he whispers that it's over, that he can't even stand. He looks to the sky, realizing his comrade's battle is also finished. The bodies of the other wolves lie scattered across the field of battle. A heavy, armored boot steps into view beside his prone form. The giant warrior Gons stands over him, axe resting on his shoulder. The hulking adventurer looks down at his battered, exhausted comrade. Jin believes it was his mistake, that he deserves death for his failure. Gon stares down at him, his face half shrouded in dark shadow. The giant's grim expression breaks into a wide, toothy grin of respect. Jin is completely dumbfounded by this unexpected reaction. Al appears, expressing his utter disbelief at what he just witnessed. He praises Jin, declaring him more than qualified as a combatant. The party gathers around the massive corpse of the fallen alpha wolf. Kimin takes out his knife and begins to butcher the creature's carcass. His sharp blade slices deep into the monster's thick, bristling hide. He carefully searches for valuables within the beast's chest cavity. Kimin's eyes suddenly widen in surprise as he discovers something. Gons announces that he has found what they were looking for. He pulls a glowing crystal from the corpse, calling it a magic stone. Al remarks on the impressive size of the priceless stone. He explains they are used as fuel for magic tools and in alchemy. Such stones only form inside monsters that have lived for a very long time. Deep within the alpha wolf, Kimin discovers a rare, glowing magic stone. Jean beams, realizing this valuable, consumable item will sell for a high price. Al declares that after butchering the corpse, it is time for their greeting. An overhead view shows the small, rustic village where their quest began. The villagers stare in shock and fear as the party approaches their gates. The four adventurers, Kimin, Gons, Al, and Jean, are a formidable, intimidating sight. Gons and Al stride forward, carrying the massive pelt of the alpha wolf. The village elder rushes to meet them, his face slick with nervous sweat. He gasps in disbelief, asking how they alone defeated the fearsome black wolf. Gons glares with pure menace, stating they almost died because of the elder. With a furious roar, Gons swings his axe directly at the terrified man's head. Al desperately throws himself in the way, struggling to hold back his enraged comrade. A narration box explains that if not for Al's block, the elder would be dead. The weeping elder confesses his deception, admitting he gambled with their lives. Jean realizes the elder judged their lives as less valuable than the quest fee. Al looks on with cold fury, disgusted by the man's pathetic, life-threatening gamble. The subsequent negotiations for compensation, led by Al, were utterly merciless. On the road back, the party camps, exhausted but flush with their hard-won prize. Around the campfire, they finally open up, sharing stories of their past lives. Jean understands that by fighting and surviving together, a true bond was forged. He realizes in this moment that he has finally become a real party member. As the imposing walls of Rockcliffe appear, Jean feels an unexpected nostalgia. The city he once saw as a den of criminals now feels like his home. A warm smile spreads across his face as he quietly says, "I'm home." Back in his room, he decides to check his status to see his progress. He is confused to see his level is still capped at a frustrating 15. He wonders why, thinking the Black Wolf should have provided enough experience. He speculates that perhaps he needs a special item to level up further. Sitting on his bed, he sees that while his level is unchanged, a new title has appeared. The garbled text infuriates him as he shouts, cursing the god for this prank. He clutches his head, yelling that he's not bald and decrying the god's cruel jokes. He remembers being thrown naked into this world to fight goblins and men. He has finally found a semblance of a normal life, only to face this new mockery. He imagines the smirking god, convinced the deity is enjoying his suffering. Clenching his fist, he vows that he will not be the god's plaything. With grim determination, he looks toward the heavens, issuing a silent challenge. He swears under the moonlit sky that he will find happiness in this world. A few days later, Jean rests in bed, recovering from their ordeal. He learns that adventurers like Gons live for the now, spending freely. For the first time since his arrival, he takes a moment to simply rest. He stretches with a massive yawn, having slept until noon. A title page shows the rugged Jean and the composed Al against the stone wall. Another page shows the imposing Gons and the mysterious, hooded Kimin. Jin's new routine includes gathering information from a gruff guild clerk. The clerk, a former adventurer, recalls their conversation about the level wall. He explains that adventurers face a power cap every 5 levels. To pass level 10, one must defeat a Category 3 monster. A terrifying, shadowy beast represents the mighty Category 4 monsters. The clerk reveals the simple, brutal reason no one can surpass level 15. Al explains that their standard iron weapons are completely ineffective. A gleaming adamantite axe is shown, a weapon far beyond their current means. The clerk notes that even with such a weapon, victory is never guaranteed. Jean now understands why most adventurers choose to stagnate at level 15. The clerk quietly admits that he, too, made that same choice long ago. The sun sets over the rooftops of the guild hall. Jean lies in his bed, contemplating the seemingly insurmountable level 15 wall. He knows challenging it could mean losing the small happiness he's just found. He yawns, covering his mouth as he wonders what his next move should be. He sits up, clenching his fist, and asks himself if he truly wants to get stronger. As he asks the question, his eyes fly open, struck by a sudden realization. He gets out of bed, planting his bare feet firmly on the floor. Standing in his room, he wonders about the strange sense of disharmony he felt. He throws a practice punch, his arm a blur of motion. The feeling persists as he throws another punch with perfect form. He looks at his fist, certain that his body feels unnaturally heavy. The guild's outdoor courtyard is empty in the early morning. Long wooden tables and benches sit vacant on the cobblestones. Jean explains the strange feeling to Al, who surprisingly understands completely. Al explains that combat skills, like his own swordsmanship, boost physical abilities. A diagram shows how the skill activates with the intent to fight and a weapon in hand. When the skill deactivates, Al says his body feels sluggish by comparison. Jean realizes this is exactly what he felt, a common experience for warriors. But he has a hunch, noting that he only just learned of this phenomenon. Al finds this strange, pondering why Jean wouldn't have noticed before. Jean is struck by a thought. He should have noticed the skill's effect long ago. He had always assumed his karate skill had no tangible physical boost. If Al is right, then he has just experienced his skill deactivating for the first time. His hand trembles as the implications of this new understanding sink in. If a sword triggers swordsmanship, what is the trigger for a weaponless art? He wonders if the trigger for his karate skill is simply using its techniques. A small smile touches his lips as he whispers the answer: breathing. His specialized breathing is a technique he has honed over many years. His gaze, his walk, his center of gravity, his entire body moves with karate. He realizes with a shock that he has kept his skill constantly activated. Only when he was lying defenseless did his technique relax, deactivating the skill. Al stares, completely baffled by Jin's sudden, silent, and intense revelation. Jean snaps back to reality, shouting Al's name with newfound urgency. He demands that I'll teach him everything he possibly knows about skills. That night, the moon hangs over the desolate mountains outside the city. Jin's footsteps firmly on the rocky ground of the wilderness. He walks alone into the darkness, carrying a single, flickering lantern. He finds a secluded, empty training ground he had scouted out earlier. Looking around, he confirms that he is completely alone. He sets down his lantern, glad to have found a place to train in private. He thinks to himself that after Al's explanation, he cannot simply sit still. He recalls Al's words about optimizing a skill's effect through deep understanding. If what Al said is true, the potential for growth is incredible. He stomps his foot, determined to put this new theory to the test. In the pale moonlight, he settles into a deep, powerful karate stance. He closes his eyes, focusing his mind and visualizing the movements to come. In the midst of training, Nozaki Jin feels his body moving on its own. He tells himself not to fight it, but to entrust his body to the skill. He executes a perfect straight punch, phantom images of the motion trailing behind him. His fist extends with incredible force, his eyes wide with focused intensity. A close-up on his powerful, perfectly formed fist is shown against a stark black background. Looking down at his hand, he marvels at the incredible power he has just unleashed. He analyzes the technique, relaxing his knees to lower his center of gravity. He channels that stored energy through his body, adding a 180-degree twist to his fist. This complex control, channeling his full weight, is only possible with the skill's help. He stands alone, realizing this is the world of true martial arts masters. A simple lantern on the ground sputters, its flame extinguished by a gust of wind. He continues his training through the night, executing a powerful side kick. He transitions smoothly into a defensive block, his form perfect and controlled. From the back, he unleashes another kick, a blur of controlled motion. He follows through with an open-handed strike, ready for the next movement. Wiping sweat from his brow, he realizes with a start that this is fun. A memory surfaces of himself as a young, determined boy in a karate gi. He feels as though he has returned to those cherished days of his youth. He pauses his training for a moment, sweat beading on the back of his neck. He stands beside his younger self, shouting his gratitude to this new world. He looks to the full moon, thanking the god for creating his karate skill. Under the moonlit sky, he vows to live and grow stronger in this place. The sun rises over the city walls, its brilliant rays piercing the dawn. He lies on the ground, utterly exhausted from his all-night training session. He lays back, fulfilled after a night spent pursuing the heart of his art. His eyes snap open, filled with a burning, almost manic energy. He gasps that he didn't sleep, driven by an overwhelming desire to train more. Lying on the ground, he looks up as the city begins to stir with life. He realizes he can't continue his intense training now that the city is awake. He approaches the Adventurers Guild quest board, looking for an excuse to leave. Walking through the crowd, he keeps his eyes focused on the board. He finds it, a simple quest to gather medicinal herbs. That's the one. He rips the parchment from the board with a sharp, decisive sound. He presents the quest to the clerk, asking to begin the necessary procedures. The clerk scoffs, wondering why a star party member would take such a cheap job. Jean explains he wants to make his own potions and avoid paying city taxes. The clerk asks where he learned to make potions. Jean says a pharmacist taught him. The clerk laughs loudly, joking that Jean must have threatened the pharmacist for the recipe. Jean thinks how pharmacists don't share recipes, even with apprentices of many years. A brief flash of Cray's profile appears in his memory, the source of his knowledge. The clerk finishes the paperwork, and Jean is finally ready to go. The clerk stamps the guild pass, announcing that the quest has officially begun. Hooded and ready, Jean walks towards the city gate, leaving Rockcliffe behind him. He presents his pass to the gate guard, who allows him to proceed. He walks out into the rocky, barren landscape that surrounds the city. A lone figure, he journeys out into the vast, empty wilderness. He pauses at a rustic signpost, choosing which path to follow. He walks along a narrow dirt path, heading deeper into the wilds. His boots tread the dusty ground as he enters a wooded area. The path leads him down into a valley nestled between rocky hills. He arrives at a tranquil clearing beside a gentle, flowing stream. He spots his quarry, identifying the broadleaf plants as gnarl grass. He recalls the proper way to harvest it, digging up the entire root. With the task quickly finished, he declares it's time for his real training. He places his satchel, now full of herbs, safely on the ground. He drops his cloak and bag, preparing to begin his practice in earnest. He resolves to train without his skill, preparing for a situation where it might be sealed. Now knowing his karate's range, he wants to research his other skills. He decides to test if he can fight with presence detection active to become stronger. On a high cliff, he laments that there are too many things he wants to do. Time passes in a blur of relentless, focused training. The intensive training continues, pushing his body and skills to their absolute limits. His foot stomps the ground as he moves through his martial arts forms. He pants, admitting that training through the night is tough, but enjoyable. Suddenly, he gasps, his body freezing in the middle of a movement. His presence detection reveals a perfect, luminous white silhouette of a deer. He touches the back of his neck, wondering what just happened to him. How could he know what it was without being able to physically see it? He looks around the forest clearing, his eyes wide with shocked realization. In his mind's eye, he sees the detailed life form of a bird in flight. He perceives the perfect, ghostly image of a spider nearby in its web. He sits at the center of a vast, invisible ecosystem of living things. Before, he only sensed vague presences, but now he sees their outlines clearly. He sees a strange, winged insect resting on a tree branch near him. He realizes his presence detection skill has evolved, its processing power enhanced. A sense of confidence washes over him. He knows he can do this. He throws his arms up and back at the guild. He places the completed quest form on the counter. The clerk comments that he has been putting in a lot of effort lately. Jean mentions he's also thinking of making potions for his other party members. The clerk stamps the form, joking he should ask Jean to sell his share too. He thanks the clerk, who waves the completed form at him dismissively. The clerk's expression turns serious as he warns Yajin that he is being targeted. He explains that successful parties are a delicious prize for the city's criminals. A map shows how criminals from the kingdoms end up in the lawless lands of Rockcliffe. These men, he warns, wouldn't hesitate to kill for money. He tells Jean to be careful. Jean is shaken, unsure how to react to such a direct and grim warning. He walks through the city streets, now seeing every person with deep suspicion. His heart pounds as he thinks that everyone he sees looks like a criminal. He feels a menacing presence just behind him in a narrow alleyway. A hooded figure with a sinister smile watches him from the shadows. He leaves the city, heading for the open plains to avoid a potential ambush. His boots kick up dust as he walks along the barren path. The sound of other footsteps joins his own. He is being followed. 3 figures emerge, a rogue, a brute, and a sinister man in a hood. The central figure's eyes are wide and unsettling, his smile a cruel slash. Jin's presence detection reveals their glowing forms as they appear suddenly behind him. He realizes they've been following him since he left the city. He is their target. He knows these 3 are too skilled to be half-baked Rockcliffe thugs. He concludes that these aren't cheap bandits, but professional killers. He knew his enemies would choose the forest, a place with no witnesses. Running was not an option. He had to fight to keep his new life. He clenched his fist, steeling his resolve for the inevitable confrontation. This was his chosen battlefield. He would intercept his hunters in the woods. A lone, hooded figure, one of the assassins, cautiously made his way through the trees. He was soon joined by 2 companions, a burly brute and their slender leader. The hooded man paused, his expression tense as he scanned the quiet forest. The path ahead of them was empty, their quarry having seemingly vanished. The 3 assassins stopped, their heads turning as they searched for their target. Suddenly confronted, the brute gruffly asked if their target needed something from them. The vast, silent forest stretched out around them. Jean stepped out from behind a thick tree, his face a grim, unreadable mask. The assassins stared down the path at Jean, who stood his ground alone. The hooded man gave a wide, unnerving smile, acknowledging Jin's presence. He offered a false promise, saying they would spare his life for his money. Jean stared back, his expression flat as he called their offer a blatant lie. The brute confirmed they had no intention of letting him live to report them. Jean countered that his party, Gonza's party, would end their careers for this. The leader smirked, confirming that Jean understood the situation perfectly. With a sneering challenge, the leader lunged forward, his sword drawn. Jean turned and bolted, the leader screaming that he was an idiot for running. The leader's eyes were filled with a burning, frustrated rage. A 4th, heavily armored assassin joined the chase, roaring for Jin's death. Jean ran, knowing a retreat to the city would only bring more danger. He let out a defiant shout, having fully resolved himself to fight for his life. The 4 hunters pursued their one prey, their grim faces set as the hunt began. The chapter began, Episode 15, The Price of a Life. The chase led to a clearing dominated by a massive, fallen log. Jin's silhouette was seen sprinting effortlessly along the top of the giant log. For a moment, the clearing was empty and silent once more. 2 of his pursuers followed, shouting for him to wait up. The 3 main assassins gave chase, the leader cursing Jin's nimble movements. Activating his skill, Jean saw the glowing life signatures of his three pursuers. He noted the growing distance between them, a result of their varied equipment. The heavily armored man stumbled on the uneven terrain, losing his balance. He caught himself against a tree, letting out a curse at his misstep. Jin's eye narrowed. With one man delayed, he saw his chance to strike. He ducked behind a thick tree trunk, vanishing from sight. The two remaining pursuers skidded to a halt, shocked that he had disappeared. The brute looked around in confusion, asking where their target had gone. Jin exploded from his hiding spot, striking the brute on the back of the neck. The brute stumbled forward, crashing into the leader in a tangle of limbs. A grim smile of satisfaction crossed Jin's face as his plan worked. He planted his foot firmly on the ground, preparing his next move. He used the brute's body to block the leader's incoming sword thrust. The two assassins became hopelessly entangled as Jin deftly sidestepped them. A powerful kick sent the two men tumbling to the ground in a heap. The brute, pinned beneath his leader, struggled uselessly to get free. The leader's eye was wide with shock and pain from the unexpected attack. Jin's foot landed solidly, ready to press his advantage. He brought his boot down hard on the assassin's tangled legs, incapacitating them. As the leader screamed in pain, Jin sprinted past towards the final opponent. The bald warrior charged forward, his fists raised in a crude brawler's stance. Jin's eyes narrowed. He would show this man the fruits of his relentless training. The warrior's hand tightened on the hilt of his sword. He lunged with his sword thrust, but Jin met the blade with an open, guiding hand. In a fluid motion, Jin controlled the man's arm and stepped inside his guard. Jin's face was a mask of pure focus as he prepared to unleash his power. He delivered a perfect straight punch, the impact exploding against the warrior's face. The punch connected with brutal force, the man's features distorting on impact. The two fighters were framed between the trees at the moment of the decisive blow. The warrior collapsed to his knees, his sword clattering to the ground. With a final thud, he fell face first into the dirt, completely unconscious. Jin stood over his defeated opponent, the immediate threat neutralized. He mentally reviewed his attack, noting the perfect execution of the technique. Blood trickled from the mouth of the downed assassin leader. The leader's sword fell from his grasp, its tip piercing the soft earth. He struggled to push himself up, using his fallen sword as a crutch. The brute, still on the ground, groaned in agony from his injuries. The leader looked up at Jin with terror, gasping for air. His face was a pathetic mask of tears as he begged Jin to spare his life. He swore he would never cross Jin again, but Jin's expression remained skeptical. Jin turned his back on the groveling man and began to walk away. The leader watched him go, his face streaked with tears and grime. From the assassin's perspective, Jin's figure disappeared among the trees. The leader sat in the dirt, covering his face with his hand in silence. His expression twisted into a silent, seething snarl of pure hatred. Jin's eye narrowed. He muttered a curse, vowing the man would remember him. The leader looked up to see Jin had stopped and was holding stone. Jin's hand closed tightly around a heavy, round rock. With a grim expression, he drew his arm back, preparing to throw. The assassin's capture gear was laid out, a voice wondering about the thrown stone. Al confirmed it was wise to avoid a sword fight, as they might have skills. A flashback showed the leader lying unconscious in the forest clearing. Jin remarked that the man was formidable, never letting go of his sword. Al explained that rockless adventurers are stuck at level 15, creating desperation. Some, he continued, turn to banditry, as it's more profitable than honest work. Jin sighed in frustration, realizing he was now a target for such desperate men. Al smiled, explaining that this is a rite of passage for any successful adventurer. He advised selling the gear in the slums to send a message to the underworld. The scene shifted to a grimy alleyway in the city's slums. A crude wooden sign depicted a bag of coins, marking a pawn shop. Jin placed a small, heavy pouch of coin on the shop's counter. He offered the money to the hooded man, asking if it was sufficient. The hooded man, now a fence, agreed to work with Jean in the future. Jean sat alone on the edge of a stone well, lost in thought. He held the small bag of coins, contemplating the cheap price of a life here. He hung his head, utterly disgusted by the brutal reality of his situation. He looked down an alley, realizing his survival now depended on fighting criminals. He walked through the arched stone doorway of the Adventurers Guild, his sanctuary. A voice calls out to me, "Yajin, over here, over here." My party sits together at our usual table in the guild hall. Gons greets me with a wide grin, asking if I've sold the gear. I ask him if he's trying to mooch off me now that he's broke. Al chimes in, saying I can show off while they get free drinks. With a weary sigh, I tell them both to shut up. Gons' expression turns serious, telling me that adventurers shouldn't be moping. He's right. There's no point in worrying about the future all by myself. With a roar, Gons agrees that it's time for us to drink. And so, I join Gons and the others in a boisterous toast. Their camaraderie helps to ease the heavy gloom weighing on my heart. But beneath our friendship, I know the quiet hunter, Kimin, hold a secret. I recall my first impressions of Gons, a man who demanded my money. He was a brute who shook down anyone he didn't like. His raw power was his only law in the city of Rockcliffe. Fear was the only language his victims understood. Having worked with him, I knew one thing for sure. Gons is an idiot. He acts purely on instinct, fighting and robbing whenever he pleases. Newcomers especially learn quickly that they have no choice but to obey him. After all, Gons is stronger than anyone else in this entire city. Those who dared to defy him in the past were brutally slaughtered. If you don't want to be a target, you must show your strength. I watch as the man brags about being mugged by the famous Gons. Gons tells me he's heading to the armory. I'm off to gather herbs. But in this world, not everyone challenges you from a front. So why is Gons, a man who lives by instinct, still alive? The answer, I've come to realize, is Al. Al has another side to him, a cunning nature he keeps hidden. He has built his own information network throughout the entire city. All the city's whispers and secrets eventually find their way to him. He tells me his informant just reported on Gons' latest shakedown. The victim was apparently thrilled, thanks to a useful rumor Al started. He wonders aloud who could have started such a rumor, a master of manipulation. I tell him that thanks to his schemes, our party's reputation is safe. Al just smiles, feigning ignorance of my words. He then mentions a special hair growth medicine isn't sold in this city. A sudden, horrifying realization dawns on me. Where can I find it? I scream, confirming Al's cunning nature. My foot slams onto the cobblestones, my mind racing. One day, my name will be spoken with the same respect as theirs. A sudden movement catches my eye. It's Kimin, walking alone. I wonder where he is headed. He's smaller than me, yet feared. I need to see his strength. With my mind made up, I decide to follow him. His path leads him to a strange, unfamiliar door. I watch from the shadows, wondering what this place could be. It appears to be a simple inn, but something feels off. Wine in. My thoughts are shattered by a sudden, piercing scream. A man bursts through a second-story window, crashing to the street below. Kimin shoves past the dazed man, shouting for him to move. The man curses, admitting he might have killed the woman inside. He scrambles to his feet and flees, leaving me utterly confused. Kimin charges out, yelling that he's leaving the woman in my care. I rush inside, calling his name, but he's already gone. I can't believe it. The quiet Kimin is actually speaking to me. He turns, pleading for my help to track the man who fled. Without hesitation, we give chase through the city's back alleys. I run beside him, demanding to know what just happened back there. He explains the man attacked a prostitute after she rejected him. I remember the guild master mentioning Kimin knew one of the local girls. Cursing, I realize the woman must be seriously injured. A cold rage fills me. I will kill the man responsible for this. Our pursuit leads us to the door of a dimly lit tavern. We hide behind a ruined wall, Kimin asking if our target is moving. My skill reveals him inside, surrounded by what must be his friends. The strain of using my skill for so long is taking its toll. Kimin watches the entrance, his jaw tight with a cold, simmering rage. Kimmin wants to storm the tavern, but I know it's a foolish idea. Inside, he's still surrounded by his allies, deep in conversation. They're likely holed up in a back room. A direct assault is too risky. I give Kimmin a reassuring thumbs up, telling him I'll be all right. He reluctantly agrees. We will wait for our target to make a move. We remain hidden, watching as a lone figure finally emerges. My focus is absolute, every sense straining in the tense silence. My skill shows me he was sitting just moments before. Now he is standing, turning to leave the relative safety of the tavern. He's moving, Kimmin whispers, his bow already in his hands. He's heading for the counter. My line of sight is clear. He draws the bowstring, his aim steady and his purpose absolute. Here he comes. Kimmin breathes, his finger tightening on the arrow. The world seems to slow as the final countdown begins. 3, 2, 1. The target is perfectly framed in the doorway. Inside, the man shares a final, oblivious laugh with another patron. The arrow strikes true, piercing his neck with deadly precision. He is thrown from his feet, his body flying through the air. He crashes to the floorboards with a final, sickening thud. His last word is a strangled gasp of confusion. What? Another patron cautiously peeks out, his face pale with terror. Through the ruined wall, Kimmin lowers his bow, his grim task complete. He turns away, his face a mask of cold, detached resolve. Let's go back, he says, his voice flat. I'm worried about her. We return to the quiet solemnity of the inn. We stand together at her bedside, watching her sleep. I'm relieved to see her condition has finally stabilized. Kimmin remains silent, his gaze fixed on the sleeping woman. He whispers that he failed to protect her, breaking a vow to himself. I look at him, understanding that she is someone important to him. He doesn't answer, his silence speaking volumes. I reassure him that she'll heal without a scar, thanks to the medicine. He looks up, a flicker of surprise in his one visible eye. Jean places a comforting hand on Kimmin's shoulder, remarking on his resemblance to someone. A close-up on Jin's eye reveals a flicker of a distant, painful memory. Kimmin looks down, quietly thinking that the woman they saved looks like his sister. Jin's expression is somber as he contemplates the boy's painful past. The sun hangs low in the sky, casting its light over Rockcliffe city walls. Walking alone, Jean concludes that Kimmin's deadly methods are not a path he can follow. He reflects that, put simply, Kimmin's way of demonstrating power is through assassination. Jean realizes with a start that Kimmin might be the most feared of them all. He resolves that he cannot imitate his comrade and must find his own way forward. Lying in bed that night, Jean sighs, knowing peaceful days are still far away. His boots tread upon the stone path as he walks through the city. He stands alone for a moment, lost in his thoughts. He considers that there must be another way for him to show his strength. He recalls AL's words about the fierce competition that begins at level 15. Jean looks up, imagining the immense, gear-like obstacle known as the level wall. The title page reads, Episode 17, The Blade Thrust at Him. The scene opens on a narrow alleyway between two tall, timber-framed buildings. Jean walks down the alley, unaware that another figure is following him. A hooded man suddenly confronts him, drawing a gleaming longsword. A few days have passed since Kimmin's grim assassination mission in the city. Jin's foot grinds on the gravel as he thinks to himself. Again, his heart stirs with a wild feeling as he challenges his opponent to attack. The attacker is revealed to be Garm, the scarred adventurer, holding his sword ready. The two men face off, Garm with his blade and Jean in a ready stance. Jin's expression is one of pure focus, his fist clenched tightly. Garm slides his foot forward, his body tensing for the attack. Jean subtly shifts his weight, his eyes locked on his opponent. Garm adjusts his grip, preparing to lunge with his sword. Jean plants his foot firmly, bracing for the coming assault. With a sharp sound, Garm bursts forward in a blur of motion. Jin's feet slide across the stone as he moves to intercept the attack. A split panel shows the intense, focused gazes of the two combatants. Garm looks surprised as Jean closes the distance with impossible speed. Jean has planted his foot, now well inside the effective range of the sword. He pivots on his heel, preparing a devastating counterattack. Jin's face is a mask of determination as he tells Garm to give up. Garm looks down, his expression unreadable, seemingly defeated by the maneuver. He clicks his tongue in frustration, refusing to yield. In a flash of movement, Jin's eye is all that is visible. Jin now holds Garm's sword, having disarmed him in an instant. The sound of steel clashing rings through the narrow alley. He holds the broken tip of the blade, having snapped it with his bare hands. Garm, realizing the danger, decides to throw a powerful left jab. Jin raises his forearm, blocking the punch with a solid thud. Realizing Garm has closed the gap, Jin immediately decides on his next move. He ducks low, flowing underneath Garm's outstretched arm like water. He drives his shoulder hard into the swordsman's unprotected midsection. The powerful blow sends Garm staggering backward in pain. Jin presses his advantage, moving in close to his off-balance opponent. He shoves Garm backward, pinning him against the rough stone wall. A loud, dull thud echoes as Garm's head is slammed against the wall. Garm's head snaps back, his eyes dazed from the brutal impact. Jin grabs Garm's chin with a powerful, unyielding grip. He prepares to deliver another devastating blow to the stunned man. Garm's face is smashed into the stone wall with incredible force. The sound of the final, decisive impact rings out. Garm lies unconscious on the ground as Jin stands over his defeated foe. Wiping his arm, Jin mutters that his opponent was a tough one. He reflects that without his martial arts experience from Japan, he would have lost. The scene shifts to a small shop with a money bag sign hanging outside. Jin places a small pouch on the counter, thanking the proprietor. The shopkeeper gives Jin his payment, asking if he's all right after his troubles. Jin explains that this is the life of a wanted man, but the shop is grateful for the business. He strides through the city streets, his purpose clear in his steps. Pulling his hood low, he thinks that this is how he adapts to this new world. His thoughts turn to the slums, a lawless zone that requires extreme caution. A corrupt noble is shown, having been paid off by the slum boss for autonomy. The slum boss is a fearsome figure, ruling a paradise for villains. Jin notes that despite being lawless, the slum seems controlled by the boss. While the sanitation is poor, he sees no corpses left lying in the streets. He knows the grim reason. Dead bodies are sold for parts, hair for wigs, and bones for alchemy. A butcher stands at his stall. A final, chilling rule is never to eat meat from the slums. As he walks, Jin feels the constant, unnerving sensation of being watched. The chaotic layout means he must keep his senses fully open to survive. The feeling is like walking through a forest densely packed with hidden monsters. He is exhausted and on edge, wishing only to leave the slums and rest. He knows he shouldn't be in such a dangerous place, but he has no choice. He must sell his illicit gear here to avoid trouble. He steels himself, trying to believe he is handling the situation well. He approaches a large stone archway that marks the exit of the slum. He sighs in relief, sensing no one nearby and thinking he has escaped safely. With the danger seemingly behind him, he decides to return to the guild. He walks past several large burlap sacks piled near the archway. He pauses for a moment, his back turned to the seemingly innocent pile. A figure begins to rise silently from behind the sacks. A brutish thug with a cruel sneer emerges from the shadows behind him. The thug growls, demanding that Jin hand over all of his money. Simultaneously, a second, smaller attacker rushes him from the side. Jin reacts instantly, intercepting the man with a swift punch to the gut. He follows the punch with a powerful kick, sending the man flying. The attacker crumples to the ground under the force of the blow. Jin crouches, panting from the sudden exertion, ready for the other thug. He gasps, his breath catching in his throat as a sharp pain erupts in his side. He looks down in horror to see the hilt of a dagger embedded in his tunic. He realizes his fatal mistake. He had let his guard down after leaving the slums. He understands with dawning terror that his attacker used presence concealment. He stumbles away, his body beginning to fail him from the shock and pain. He leans against a wall, cursing himself and wondering what he did wrong. He takes a single, faltering step, his legs trembling beneath him. His eyes burn with desperation. He must somehow make it to the clinic. He stares at his hand in disbelief, the horrifying truth dawning on him. Poison. The world spins sickeningly, his perspective tilting on its axis. His strength gives out, and he collapses onto the cold cobblestones. His body curls instinctively as the last of his consciousness fades. His vision blurs, the light of the world dimming in his weary eyes. He wonders where he is as his awareness finally slips away completely. He stares at his own self, plunging toward a distant, beckoning light. He recalls the brutal ambush, the glint of a descending blade. He understands now. He was stabbed, his guard finally broken. His body feels heavy, sinking into an endless, dark abyss. He falls into the very depths of his own consciousness. He plummets through a gray void, away from a distant light. Below him, a dark, viscous surface rises up to meet him. He crashes into the thick mire with a startled, desperate splash. He looks at his hand, covered in the thick, clinging sludge. A massive, ghoulish hand made of mud erupts from the mire. The grotesque hand seizes him, and he cries out in terror. A mud-caked face, one of his victims, laughs madly at his plight. The face of another fallen foe emerges from the suffocating mud. He finds himself surrounded by the ghoulish figures of his past. They're the men he killed, and their voices accuse him. Murderer. Their ghostly faces promise to curse him for all eternity. They drag him down, their grasping hands pulling him onto the surface. His hand slips beneath the mire, a final, silent plea for help. He is consumed by a cold, absolute, and suffocating blackness. He floats alone in the void, curled into a vulnerable, fetal position. An unbearable cold seeps into his bones as his body shivers uncontrollably. Is this his end? Is this the punishment for his sins? He accepts his guilt, wondering if his life means only more killing. He is tired of living, tired of fighting. He finally surrenders to the darkness. He gained nothing in this world that seems to be full of bastards. He tells himself he has no lingering attachments left to this life. With a final, resigned clench of his fist, he lets go. But in the darkness, a single, tiny point of light appears. His eye opens, reflecting the light, a spark of defiance returning. The light streaks across the void as a powerful memory takes form. He remembers his first days, staring at his strange status screen. The skill that defined his old life appears before him. Karate. A question echoes in his mind. Had he truly gained nothing? Memories begin to flood back, filling his vision with brilliant light. He sees the faces of his comrades reflected in his eye. A flash of memory shows the silhouettes of his party members. He remembers their laughter, their boisterous camaraderie at the guild. The question returns, were there only bastards in this world? His eyes widen as another, brighter memory appears to him. He sees a radiant silhouette, a figure of pure, gentle light. The light grows, a brilliant, warm, and comforting presence. It is the memory of Kray's gentle and beautiful smile. His eyes fly open, a new, unshakable resolve burning within him. He finds himself back in the mire, but things are different now. He is no longer sinking, but fighting his way back to the surface. His hand bursts through the sludge, reaching for the air above. He emerges from the depths with a defiant, primal roar. He stands among the dead, no longer their victim, but their master. This is a joke. Like hell, he will ever give up now. He smashes a ghoul with his fist, vowing that he will live. He will destroy anyone and anything that stands in his path. Curses and evil spirits mean nothing to his will to survive. He breaks free, reaching for the light beyond the crushing darkness. His entire being is focused on that one upward desperate motion. His face is a mask of pure, unshakable determination. His eyes are fixed on the light, on the hope of life. His hand finally breaks through into a blinding white light. The light fades, revealing a familiar half-timbered clinic building. A door creaks open as someone announces they're going shopping. A pair of small, booted feet descend the stone steps. It is Belle, leaving the clinic with a basket in hand. She stops short, startled by the sight of a collapsed body. Jean lies face down on the cobblestones, unmoving and bleeding. She drops her basket, her feet frozen in place by the shock. Overcoming her fear, she rushes over to help the fallen man. Her desperate cries for help echo through the empty courtyard. "Hurry," she pleads, as his life hangs precariously in the balance. His last thought is a desperate plea. He will live. His vision returns, focusing on a familiar wooden ceiling. His eye flutters open, slowly taking in his surroundings. He is alive, lying shirtless and bandaged in a soft bed. He wonders where he is, recognizing the familiar room. A calm voice greets him, telling him he's finally awake. It's Belle, who explains that he collapsed right outside the clinic. Lord Clare appears, saying he was lucky the poison hadn't spread. Outside, the stone battlements of Rockcliffe stand silent guard. The city is a fortress, a place of supposed safety and order. The simple desire to live is often the hardest wish to grant. He realizes he has somehow found his way back to this place. He thanks Belle, but she says he should thank Cray instead. That girl, his heart skips a beat at the mere thought of her. Belle explains Cray found him and cared for him for 3 days. Claire teasingly adds that she cared for all of his needs. Jean gets flustered as Claire jokes this is the second time. Claire's expression turns serious as he wonders who Jean really is. Claire states that with the poison gone, he should leave. Jean sits up, amazed at how well his wound has already healed. He assures Claire he doesn't mean to cause trouble and will leave. Claire sternly warns him to stay away from Belle from now on. He explains Jin's situation has only gotten worse. Jean agrees. Belle leaves, reminding him she'll expect payment for his treatment. She gives him one last parting warning. Don't get stabbed again. Claire tells him to take the assassin's dagger with him. A dagger rests on a table, offered with a chilling instruction. He sits on the bed, grimly admiring the fine knife. A sudden noise from the doorway startles him. His presence detection reveals a familiar, glowing white figure. A simple wooden door stands between them. A hand gently reaches through the cracked open door. Cray stands in the doorway, her eyes wide with surprise. She looks at him, her gaze filled with deep concern. They face each other across the quiet, sunlit room. Jean watches her with a soft, gentle expression. Overcome with emotion, Cray brings her hands to her mouth. A radiant, tear-filled smile breaks through her worry. He thinks her smile is beautiful, a sight that suits her. He explains that he was stabbed and is now in more danger. If they are seen together, she could be targeted too. To protect her smile, he knows he must leave quickly. At the gate, he tells her this is where they part ways. She offers him a gift, her book of secret antidote recipes. She puts a finger to her lips, asking him to keep it secret. He is touched by her kindness, simply saying thank you. He suddenly remembers something and reaches into his tunic. He holds out a heavy gold coin from the Megad Empire. He tells her he is returning the money she had lent him. She looks down, surprised he is repaying the loan. With a bowed head, she quietly accepts the coin. A silent, final distance now separates the two of them. He gives her one last, lingering, sorrowful look. She looks up, asking him about the interest on the loan. He is taken aback, wondering if she has enough money. Her face breaks into the wide, genuine smile he loves. He thinks to himself that a smile truly suits her best. Without another word, he turned and walked away from her. He returns to the familiar sight of the Adventurers Guild. He sits alone at a long table in the common area. A server slams down a plate of sizzling lamb chops. He prepares to dig into the much-needed hot meal. Gons appears, laughing loudly with a woman on each arm. The massive warrior spots Jean sitting alone at the table. Gans calls out, demanding to know where Yajin has been. He teases Jean, asking if he was holed up with a woman. Jean explains it was nothing like that. He was stabbed. Gans is shocked, recalling his own brushes with death. He dismisses the danger, telling Jean to eat and not worry. The wicked, poisoned dagger is placed on the table. Kimin, the quiet archer, picks up the weapon to inspect it. His single visible eye widens as he examines the blade. Jean holds up the pommel, showing off its intricate design. Kimin recognizes it, identifying it as the beggar's katsuo. Jean is confused by the name and asks what it means. Al explains the owner of that knife is a professional assassin. Jean is stunned. Why would an assassin be targeting him? He frantically wonders if he's angered a slum boss. Al dismisses the idea, saying it was just a cheap job. A heavy, somber silence settles over the table. The three adventurers sit together, a quiet understanding passing between them. A sharp pain suddenly lances through Jin's bandaged wound. Al tells him not to push himself and to rest up. Jin agrees, grateful for his party's genuine concern. He feels a profound sense of belonging with these men. He looks at his comrades, Kimin and Al, eating quietly. He sees Gans, his new brother in this dangerous world. He offers a silent, heartfelt thank you to them all. Al and Kimin get up to leave, bidding him good night. He returns to the solitude of his small, rented room. He slams the wooden door shut with a loud thud. The sound of the closing door echoes in the silence. He summons his status screen to check for any changes. He had hoped for a level up, but he was still at 15. But he is shocked to see a new skill, poison resistance. He stares at the screen, a grim understanding dawning. He collapses onto his bed, exhausted and overwhelmed. Lying on his back, he stares at the unfamiliar ceiling. This latest incident has taught him a valuable lesson. He now understands just how dangerous his position is. If he doesn't grow stronger, he will eventually fall. To break the level 15 wall, he must hunt a Category 4 monster. He resolves to obtain an adamantite weapon, no matter the cost. His quest leads him to an opulent, timber-framed building. A crest of a crown and crossed swords adorns the wall. A shout of welcome echoes from behind the ornate door. A magnificent axe hangs on display inside the weapon shop. The portly shopkeeper proudly shows off his wares. Jin's eyes are drawn to a massive axe of black steel. The price is far more than he could ever have imagined. The shopkeeper explains only the very wealthy can afford them. Jin realizes such power is monopolized by the privileged. The shopkeeper asks what business he has in the store. He hopes Jin isn't just a window shopper wasting his time. Jin holds a small, cheap throwing spike in his hand. He buys the spike, thinking he might find a use for it. He leaves the shop, his boots echoing on the cobblestones. He needs far more money than he ever expected to get it. He must find a way to earn a fortune all at once. He wonders if such a high-paying, short-term job exists. A brilliant idea suddenly strikes him, a high-level quest. He pumps his fists, excited for their next big mission. The reality of the meeting, however, is grim and depressing. Al explains that they have a new quest after a long break. Jin is disappointed. He needs to regain his fighting instincts. He peeks at the 3 available quests for their target. He hides his disappointment behind Gonza's massive frame. Gonz sits at a tavern table, his eyes closed, his face a mask of simmering fury. His eyes snap open, his gaze sharp and questioning as a sound breaks the silence. Nozaki Jin, sensing the explosive atmosphere, quickly and quietly makes his exit from the table. Al muses aloud that a long-distance quest might be just the exercise they all need. He asks the departing Gons where he is going, receiving a low growl about the toilet. Jin and the others watch as their massive, angry friend stalks away from the table. Jin turns to Al, his expression urgent, demanding to know why Gons is so angry. Al explains with a cynical smile that when the money ends, so does the relationship. Jin's face falls as he realizes the gravity of the situation. This is truly bad. A sudden commotion from a guild entrance makes Jin look up, his expression questioning. A pompous adventurer, Clayboy, enters holding hands with a woman whose braid seems familiar. He asks her if she's glad she left the countryside, his voice dripping with arrogance. Jin's face contorts with disgust, understanding that this is the couple who broke Gonza's heart. The new couple and their party settle in at a table, unaware of the danger. Two other adventurers remark on their luck, noting that Clayboy rarely visits this guild. Jin grimly observes Clayboy's lack of caution, knowing such men don't last long here. A heavy boot slams onto the stone floor, the sound echoing like a thunderclap. Jin's eyes narrow. He thinks the man might survive today, but the future is uncertain. A furious voice roars through the tavern, telling the noisy brats to shut up. Clayboy is startled by the outburst, his arrogant expression turning to one of alarm. He and his entire party freeze, staring at the source of the furious interruption. Clayboy shouts back, demanding to know what's wrong with making noise in a tavern. The massive form of Gons looms over their table, his eyes glowing with white-hot rage. His hand tightens around the handle of his axe, his knuckles straining from the pressure. Jin watches from behind, his back to the viewer as the inevitable conflict begins. With calm resolve, Jin and Gon step forward to confront the arrogant adventurer. Jin wears a peaceful, disarming smile, a stark contrast to the thick tension. He holds his hands up placatingly, telling the armed Clayboy to calm himself down. With a friendly pat, he tells the man that they should all just get along. Jin suddenly pulls the surprised Clayboy into a seemingly friendly, one-armed hug. His other hand, hidden from view, forms a perfect spear hand for a debilitating strike. Clayboy lets out a silent, choked gasp as the air is driven from his lungs. Jin's thoughts reveal his technique, a perfectly timed palm heel strike to the solar plexus. He holds a wobbling man up, telling him to plant his shaking legs and sit. Jin then feigns drunken outrage, asking why Clayboy is trembling with fear over nothing. He turns to Gons, offering to buy him a drink, courtesy of the husband. He presses a jangling pouch of coins into the giant warrior's massive hand. Gons understands the gesture, muttering that he shouldn't concern himself with such small fry. With a final dismissive humph, he turns away, the immediate crisis seemingly averted. A sly smile crosses Gonza's face as Jin grins mischievously from behind him. As they leave, Gonza's ex-wife asks what just happened, her voice laced with fury. Her face is a mask of pure hatred, her eyes promising a future of violent revenge. Jin meets her glare, hoping she understands that he just saved her worthless life. Later, Al gives Jin a friendly wave, acknowledging the good work he'd done. Gons tells Al that he will leave the details of the next quest up to him. The giant then roars that it's time to drink, an idea Jin heartily seconds. Jin reflects on Gonza's simple nature, finding him easy to understand and surprisingly likable. Clayboy's group celebrates their good fortune, believing it to be a happy, lucky day. A stark panel ominously states that it was only supposed to be a lucky day. Later, Jin stands alone in the woods, his face camouflaged with dark mud. He peeks from behind a tree, his eyes wide with alarm at a sudden, unexpected sound. A whistling sound cuts through the forest's darkness, accompanied by a glint of light. An arrow slams into the tree trunk, its shaft vibrating just inches from his head. An adventurer spots him, shouting that he's there and ordering his men to surround him. Jin grits his teeth, a bead of sweat running down his temple as he realizes his plight. His presence detection skill reveals the glowing, ghostly forms of his attackers closing in. He understands that 8 adventurers are behind him, all of them aiming for his life. He lands softly on the ground, his body coiled and ready for the impending fight. His eyes narrow, scanning the dark woods in front of him for other threats. Before him, his senses reveal a sea of flickering presences, an entire horde of monsters. The blurry shapes of his unseen enemies appear as grainy outlines in the darkness. The silhouettes resolve into the familiar, grotesque forms of numerous goblins. He sees them in his mind's eye, armed with crude clubs and filled with malice. He wonders how this happened, realizing with dawning horror that he is completely surrounded. The chapter title page shows his clenched fist before a horde of shadowy, glowing-eyed goblins. One of the pursuing adventurers plants his foot firmly on the ground, ready to attack. Another curses, wondering where their target went as he searches under massive tree roots. Hidden, Gene seethes, wondering what he could have possibly done to deserve this relentless pursuit. He thinks he was just training as usual when they suddenly attacked him without warning. The leader of the adventurers notes that their quarry is a very skilled and experienced fighter. Gene analyzes his situation, realizing his escape routes to the west are completely blocked. But in that direction lies his only path, straight into a massive goblin settlement. He understands he's caught between the goblins in front and the adventurers behind. He questions the situation, wondering if this is truly just a coincidence. He deduces the adventurers aren't just after money. They have a clear intent to kill. He decides that if he's going to fight, he will do so on his home ground. He sees this desperate situation as a chance, a one-in-a-million gamble for his survival. With a sudden burst of speed, he breaks from cover, startling a nearby pursuer. "He's there," the adventurer shouts, pointing this way as Jin's eyes narrow in determination. Jin sprints through the woods, an arrow landing harmlessly in the dirt just behind him. His face is a mask of pure, desperate concentration as he pushes himself forward. A flash of white light fills the panel, signaling a sudden and explosive action. The radial lines of speed and impact continue, emphasizing the force of his move. He smashes his fist into the ground, kicking up a massive cloud of leaves and dirt. Under the cover of his makeshift smokescreen, he plunges directly into the goblin camp. The goblins, gathered around their crude hut, react with shock and utter confusion. They can only stare as the human whirlwind barrels past them, deeper into their territory. He plants his foot with a powerful thud, pivoting to change his direction mid-sprint. He continues his mad dash, running right through the heart of the goblin settlement. He lets out a primal, challenging roar, drawing all attention, goblin and human, to himself. He sends a goblin flying with a powerful, open-handed shove to its back. The creature hits the ground with a heavy thud, knocked aside like a bowling pin. He runs through the scattered goblins, leaving a trail of chaos in his wake. The faces of the goblins are a mixture of shock, fear, and rapidly growing anger. The adventurers burst through the tree-line, shouting for their comrades to give chase. The scarred leader, sword in hand, sprints into the clearing, his eyes on his target. He skids to a sudden halt, his eyes wide with shock and utter disbelief. He finds himself surrounded on all sides by a horde of enraged, club-waving goblins. The leader screams that it's just a goblin nest and orders his men to retreat immediately. His second-in-command grits his teeth, realizing it's useless. The goblins can smell them. A goblin charges with a crude club, screaming that he has no choice. The adventurer leader, Garm, roars a powerful command to his men. From above, Garm orders his men to slaughter the swarming goblins. A warrior blocks a goblin's attack as another is killed behind him. A swordsman drives his blade deep into a goblin's torso. The sword sinks into the creature's flesh with a sickening thud. Garm casually dismisses his dying foe as nothing but small fry. He spins fluidly, decapitating another goblin that leaps at him from behind. Garm grits his teeth, wondering how many more of them there are. His eyes widen in shock as he sees a massive shadow, calling it huge. A powerful fist smashes into Garm's face, grotesquely distorting his features. Nozaki Jin stands over the fallen adventurer, his fist still extended. With a deep scowl, he asks who was just called a goblin. Jin stands over the bloodied man, now holding the adventurer's sword. Another adventurer struggles desperately, fending off two goblins at once. Jin, armed with a dagger, defiantly shouts that they won't hit him. A dagger sinks deep into the side of an adventurer. The wounded man cries out in agony, as a goblin charges him. A heavy club smashes down on the back of another adventurer's head. A goblin attacks Jin's comrade while he is already engaged in combat. The club-wielding goblin falls to the ground, its weapon clattering beside it. Jin lands a powerful uppercut, his fist connecting with a goblin's jaw. The force of the blow sends the goblin flying backward through the air. Jin observes the carnage with a grimace, muttering that they are weak. He realizes the battle is ending too quickly. The power gap is too great. He glances back over his shoulder, a sudden sense of unease washing over him. A massive, clawed foot steps into the clearing, silencing the battle. An adventurer looks up, his face a mask of pure, shocked terror. The party's archer stares in disbelief, his bow half drawn. The remaining adventurers freeze, their expressions grim and fearful. Garm looks up from the ground at three dark silhouettes on a ridge. The monstrous, clawed foot of the central figure is shown in detail. Three elite goblins stand revealed, a warrior, a general, and a mage. The hobgoblin general glares down, its eyes radiating cold intelligence. The scarred goblin warrior chews on a twig, its single eye menacing. Garm identifies the high-ranking hobgoblin and the mutated goblin warrior. He then wonders what the third, mysterious hooded figure could be. He admits to himself that he has never seen anything like it before. With growing dread, he concludes it must be another mutated variant. The creature pulls back its hood, revealing itself to be a goblin mage. Hidden in a tree, Jin breathes a sigh of relief, thinking he is safe. He watches with rapt attention, wondering what will happen now. An adventurer assesses their situation, noting there are 6 of them left. Another adventurer confirms their numbers, his face pale, intense. A third warrior looks on with a grim, determined expression. The party's archer stares, his eyes wide with apprehension. Another of the adventurers gulps nervously, his fear palpable. Garm grits his teeth, acknowledging their cooperation against the new threat. The scarred goblin warrior's single eye glares with pure malice. The hobgoblin general narrows its eyes, ready to begin the slaughter. The goblin mage's soulless black eye focuses intently on his target. An adventurer's head is suddenly wreathed in blood as he is struck down. Another is impaled from behind, the blade bursting through his armor. A third lies dead on the ground, his eyes wide and vacant. The hobgoblin general surveys the carnage with cold, detached indifference. The 3 elite goblins stand victorious over the bodies of the fallen. Only 3 adventurers remain, facing the towering hobgoblin general. From his hiding spot, Jin watches the unfolding disaster from above. He mutters in awe at the incredible power of the elite goblins. He analyzes the battle. The adventurers first engaged the main goblin army. A hidden unit of goblins then launched a surprise attack from behind. A panicked rear guard moved up, leaving a fatal opening for the mage. The mage unleashed its spell, the first magic Jin had seen in this world. The fireball struck an adventurer who was fighting the goblin warrior. Jin is so shocked by the spectacle that he almost falls from the tree. The goblin warrior delivered the finishing blow, leaving 5 adventurers. The adventurers' counterattack began, cutting a swathe through lesser goblins. Just as it seemed the adventurers might gain the upper hand, the lesser goblins changed tactics, charging the adventurers' front line. Their new target was the back of the men fighting the hobgoblin. 2 goblins reached the rear guard, and one was easily cut down. The other desperately latched onto the adventurer's leg. The adventurer was distracted for a moment as he raised his sword. The hobgoblin's eyes widened, seizing the momentary opening. With a horrifying display of strength, it ripped the adventurer's head off. Garm lets out a scream of pure, unadulterated rage at the sight. He charges forward, plunging his sword deep into the hobgoblin's back. The hobgoblin barely flinches, blood trickling down its massive back. It turns its head with an expression of mild annoyance. Its gaze is one of pure contempt for the human's futile attack. It swats Garm away with a powerful, dismissive backhand strike. The The hobgoblin looks to the sky, blood splattering its face. It lets out a massive, triumphant roar that echoes through the forest. But Jin's keen eye perceives the sound differently. To him, it sounded like a cry of anguish for its fallen comrades. Tears of blood stream down the hobgoblin general's face. The battlefield is now a tense 3-on-3 standoff. Garm rises to his feet, preparing to face the towering hobgoblin. His remaining men stand ready to engage the goblin warrior. The battle has fractured into two fronts, leader versus leader. Jin's eyes narrow, waiting to see which side will make the first move. The goblin mage begins to chant, its hands moving in a complex pattern. The swordsman tells his archer companion to calm down and take aim. The archer resolves to shoot before the goblin's chant is complete. But the goblin warrior charges, ignoring the mage entirely. The archer realizes with horror that he won't make it in time. He looses the arrow, which flies straight and true towards the mage. The mage raises its hand, a swirling vortex of black energy appearing. The arrow vanishes into the void, its spell nullified. The goblin warrior closes in on the now defenseless swordsman. An adventurer screams in agony, sent stumbling backward by a brutal attack. A hulking goblin warrior snarls, its face a mask of pure aggression. The goblin presses its advantage, striking the adventurer with its cleaver. From a high branch, Nozuki Jin observes the chaotic battle below him. He realizes the goblin mage's first chant was a feint to create an opening. A treacherous adventurer reveals his allegiance, taunting his former comrades. The traitor curses as he runs, trying to create distance from the fight. He yells not to reveal his position as a fake spell is cast. He and his partner, who had been feigning death, rise from hiding. Seeing the betrayal, Jin resolves that he must intervene and help. The ambushed man realizes an enemy of his enemy is now his friend. The two traitors stand ready, one confidently saying, "All right." Jin leaps into the fray, his powerful kick sending a traitor flying. A scarred goblin roars in fury, its one good eye wide with rage. The ambushed man curses, knowing he has no choice left but to fight. Jin charges forward, his sights set on the towering goblin general. He yells a warning, urging them to stop the mage's chant at any cost. He assesses the mage's low physical ability and lack of protection. The goblin mage stares ahead, its eyes two soulless, black voids. Concluding it's just a simple goblin, he blocks its staff with his arm. His fist connects squarely with the mage's face, silencing its spell. The sharp, cracking sound of the impact echoes through the clearing. The goblin mage is sent tumbling backward, its body limp and broken. The goblin warrior stands over a fallen man, its bloody, cleaver-shouldered. Jin notes the warrior is strong, but its movements are large and telegraphed. The goblin lets out a furious roar, its single eye blazing with hatred. Jin settles into his karate stance, facing the crouching, ready warrior. He turns his head, his gaze sharp, the moment punctuated by a sound effect. His hand flashes in a feint, an eye-poke gesture to distract his foe. He follows through with a powerful high kick aimed at the goblin's head. The quiet, empty landscape sets the scene for the final confrontation. The massive foot of the goblin general plants firmly on the ground. With a final tap, Jin ensures the goblin warrior is truly defeated. His eyes narrow. He reflects that observing his enemy beforehand was crucial. He turns his head with a start, surprised by a sound behind him. He glances back, wondering if the other battle is now over as well. The scarred adventurer, Garm, grits his teeth, declaring this is the last one. Jin watches the dark silhouette of the hobgoblin general standing over the dead. He faces the general, acknowledging that it has come down to this final foe. The hobgoblin turns, its bearded face grim, recognizing its opponent. Jin recalls the first hobgoblin he met, a true monster that killed its own. He notes this one is different, its cold eyes holding no trace of sorrow. The two warriors stand in silence over the body of a fallen comrade. Jin looks down, accepting responsibility for the carnage, admitting he did this. The hobgoblin's eyes blaze with fury, as if blaming Jean for everything. Jin's own eye glints with determination, ready for the final battle. His hand clenches into a tight, powerful fist, prepared to strike. On the title page, Jean faces the hobgoblin, ready to settle things. The hobgoblin's reptilian eye widens in a silent, furious battle cry. It raises its massive cleaver high, its mouth open in a ferocious roar. Jean sidesteps the attack, his expression calm despite the blade's speed. He feels the incredible wind pressure from the swing, his brow furrowed. The hobgoblin unleashes a series of flowing horizontal slashes. Jean resolves to close the distance, moving inside the monster's guard. His foot plants firmly on the ground, preparing to launch his attack. The hobgoblin anticipates the move, bringing its blade down to block. Jean is shocked that the monster used its weapon to guard, adapting instantly. Realizing his situation, he prepares his next move, grunting in resolve. He unleashes a low kick, aiming to buckle the hobgoblin's knee. The hobgoblin smirks, a look of cunning intelligence on its face. It lifts its own leg, the powerful thigh muscle easily blocking the kick. The hobgoblin traps Jin's leg with its own, completely immobilizing him. Jean realizes his knee is being held, preventing him from moving properly. The hobgoblin's fist flies towards his face with surprising speed. The monster's clawed foot pivots, generating immense power for its strike. The hobgoblin prepares to deliver a powerful spear thrust with its weapon. A massive sound effect roars as Jean unleashes a powerful counterpunch. His fist connects with the hobgoblin's jaw, sending its head snapping back. The punch lands with devastating force, a full-body blow. Jin's toes dig into the earth, channeling all his power into the strike. The hobgoblin stumbles back, its arm raised, its eye wide with shock. Jean is stunned that the monster is still standing after such a solid hit. The hobgoblin discards its weapon, its hands curling into vicious claws. Jean meets the charge, blocking the clawed hand with a high karate guard. With a heavy thud, his spear hand strike lands deep in the monster's gut. The blow sinks into the hobgoblin's solar plexus, a devastating attack. He feels the creature's ribs shatter under the force of his strike. The hobgoblin glares back, asking, "How's that?" despite its grievous injury. Jin's eyes widen in alarm. He knows this is bad and he must retreat. The hobgoblin discards its weapon, dust billowing as it prepares to fight unarmed. A clawed hand swipes past Jin's face. He acknowledges it was a close call. The hobgoblin snarls, acknowledging what a tough opponent Jean is. It winds up for a massive, full-body swing, putting all its strength behind it. Jean braces for a wide swing, but then realizes the creature's intent is different. He sees the monster's foot pivot and understands it's not a simple swing. The hobgoblin spins, hurling its cleaver through the air like a projectile. The spinning blade flies directly towards Jin's face with incredible speed. His eyes widen in terror. He screams in his mind that he cannot dodge it. In a moment of absolute focus, his eye narrows, seeing his only chance. The hilt of the weapon aligns perfectly as he thinks. Now, with a powerful grunt, he catches the weapon by the hilt mid-flight. The hobgoblin, now unarmed, charges forward, letting out a guttural cry. It throws a powerful uppercut, the air itself seeming to crackle. Jean is shocked, realizing the hobgoblin has learned and copied his own move. The hobgoblin's expression is grim, impressed by its own combat sense. Jean grits his teeth, realizing he was repelled and unable to guard the blow. The hobgoblin follows up with a straight punch that grazes Jin's temple. The two warriors stand apart, breathing heavily, the dust settling between them. They circle each other, battered but not broken, sizing each other up. Jean glares at his opponent, blood streaming from a gash over his eye. Nozaki Jin's hand hangs limp, battered and bleeding from the brutal exchange. The hobgoblin notes with surprise that Jin's finishing blow shattered his own fist. Jean recalls a bare-knuckle technique, using the hard skull to block a punch. The two warriors stand apart, panting heavily in the aftermath of their clash. Jean catches his breath, his body coiled and ready for the next move. The hobgoblin glares, its massive chest heaving with ragged breaths of exhaustion. Jean assesses their shared state. They are both battered, bruised, and near their limit. The hobgoblin's ruined hand is shown as it asks if Jean is ready to quit. With a surge of will, the monster's broken hand slowly clenches back into a fist. The hobgoblin settles into its stance, preparing for one final, desperate charge. Jean watches his opponent, knowing the beast would never surrender so easily. With cold determination, Jean steels himself to finally end this grueling battle. The hobgoblin lunges forward, throwing a powerful but clumsy punch. Jean spits a stream of blood, a desperate gambit to blind his foe. The monster flinches, its eyes momentarily obscured by the bloody spray. Jin's fist is clenched, his arm tense to deliver a devastating counterattack. He parries the monster's arm, flowing inside its guard with practiced ease. Moving like a phantom, he slips past the hobgoblin's defense. Jean drives his fist hard into the side of the monster's jaw. His eyes are filled with focus as he follows through with the blow. The impact sends the hobgoblin staggering backward across the clearing. Jean forms a spear hand, targeting the monster's vulnerable solar plexus. He drives the strike deep into the hobgoblin's midsection with a grunt. The monster's eye widens in pure shock from the agonizing blow. His fingers dig deeper, the impact sending shockwaves through the creature's body. He follows up with a low kick, a feint to draw its attention downward. Planting his foot firmly, he prepares to unleash the final, decisive attack. In silhouette, Jean pivots, launching a powerful high kick toward the monster's head. His face is a mask of concentration as he executes the finishing blow. The kick connects with the side of the hobgoblin's head with brutal force. The monster lets out a choked, gurgling sound as its senses fail. It slumps to its knees, defeated, as Jean stands ready before it. From above, Jean looks down at the massive, unmoving form of his foe. He wonders to himself, in a daze, if he has actually won. His strength finally gives out, and he collapses to his knees in exhaustion. Kneeling, he clutches his shoulder, admitting this was his strongest opponent yet. His face shadowed, he declares the hobgoblin a true warrior whom he respects. He closes his eyes for a moment, a silent tribute to the fallen. Looking at the hobgoblin's face, he wishes the warrior a peaceful rest. The scene pulls back, showing the silent, corpse-strewn battlefield. A river of blood flows through the carnage, a testament to one man's struggle. The hobgoblin's foot stands near the fallen adventurer, Garm. Garm's eyes flutter open, a flicker of consciousness returning. From his blurry perspective, he looks up at Jean and asks if it is over. Jean confirms the battle is done, but coldly tells Garm that he will die. Garm acknowledges his fatal wound and asks if Jean will deliver the final blow. Standing over him, Jean demands to know why Garm had targeted him. Garm admits he knew more monsters were coming and he couldn't die in vain. He confesses he was at the guild when Jean first arrived and was unsettled by him. A flashback shows Jin's bizarrely polite and disarming apology to Gons. Garm recalls his confusion when Jean survived, even after that strange incident. He remembers seeing Jean use unseen skills to masterfully de-escalate a bar fight. His party was terrified, watching Jean steadily build his position of power. Garm confesses his greatest fear was that Jean would one day seek revenge. Jean stands alone on the battlefield, a solitary figure over his fallen enemy. The dying adventurer, a dagger in his chest, calls himself an idiot. Looking down at the body, Jean silently agrees that Garm was a complete idiot. He reflects that his own careless actions drew this dangerous, unwanted attention. He plans his next steps: rest, then strip the bodies before they begin to rot. He retches at the thought of dissecting the humanoid creatures. Clutching his side, he looks at the stars and decides he needs Claire's help. Back at the clinic, Jean asks Claire to repeat what he just said. Claire explains that while Belle was out, he heard news from the market. He turns and asks if Jean knows the price for goblin parts is rising. Jean is shocked to learn that the eyeballs of a goblin mage are incredibly rare. Claire mentions the parts are sold to decadent nobles for their own amusement. Jean, now bandaged, is left speechless by this strange revelation. He realizes he is in possession of 3 incredibly valuable monster parts. Claire snaps his fingers, annoyed that Jean is lost in his own thoughts. Startled, Jean snaps back to attention, asking what Claire was saying. Claire tells him to go to the church for healing magic to speed his recovery. Jean imagines a beautiful priestess, her hands glowing with a gentle, healing light. This beautiful priestess from his imagination prepares to begin the healing ritual. Outside the church, Jean grimly accepts that this is his own fault. He prays to the great God for healing from a kind and gentle hand. The reality is a large, shouting priest who bellows "Heal!" at him. The priest forcefully slams his hands onto Jin's back, applying the magic. Jin's eye bulges in agony as he begins to stammer from the pain. A blood-curdling scream of pure agony echoes from the church tower. 2 days later, Jean rubs his shoulder, groaning that the ordeal is finally over. He marvels at the magic's power, but shudders at its demonic painfulness. Al greets him outside the church, asking if his treatment is finished. Al explains the party split the cost of the treatment to afford it. He jokes that Jean must work twice as hard now, but is glad he survived. Jean calls out to Al, stopping him before he can walk away. With a serious expression, he asks Al to gather the entire party. The party, Gons, Al, and Kimmin, are assembled, listening to Jean. Gons leans forward intently, asking Jean to repeat what he just said. With fierce determination, Jean declares his intention. Let's break the level wall. Al explains the plan to use their combined funds to save for their goal. Jean states that this is their greatest challenge, a chance they won't get again. Kimmin and Al listen with serious expressions, understanding the immense risk. Al asks Jean to reveal the core of his ambitious new strategy. Jean leans in close, preparing to whisper the secret plan to his comrades. The 4 adventurers huddle around a table, listening to Jin's quiet words. After hearing the plan, Jean looks to Gons, asking for his thoughts. Gons is silent for a moment, a slow, appreciative grin spreading on his face. He suddenly throws his head back, letting out a massive, booming laugh. Grinning widely, he proclaims it is the best damn plan he has ever heard. Jean and Al exchange a look, their resolve solidified, the plan now in motion. In a quiet moment, Jean stands over the wounded Garm, asking why he was targeted. Garm, his voice a rasping whisper, begins his confession, his eyes heavy with regret. He recalls seeing Jean for the first time, a silhouette in the chaotic guild hall. Jean, battered but alive, listens intently to the dying man's story. Garm explains that he was there that day, at the tavern in the guild. He remembers watching as Jean first approached the imposing figure of Gons. He saw Jean cleverly talk his way into Gonza's good graces. Garm confesses that he and his comrades saw Jean as a smooth-talking opportunist. They believed Jean had duped his way into the strongest party's inner circle. Garm admits that since then, he found it strange that Jean never seemed to die. He recalls the incident at the tavern just before the ambush. He saw Jean masterfully de-escalate the situation with his unseen skills. We understood our mistake, Garm whispers, his voice filled with awe. Garm explains that with his skill, Jean had solidified his position in the party. The realization of Jin's true power struck fear deep into their hearts. I don't know what you are, Garm says, his eyes wide with terror. Jin's face is a mask of grim understanding as Garm finishes his confession. Garm knew they had to kill Jean before he could one day seek revenge. Jean stands silently over the man who tried to murder him. Garm, the dagger still embedded in his chest, calls himself an idiot. He looks up at the sky, his last breath a curse on his own foolishness. From a high angle, Jean stands alone over Garm's body in the desolate landscape. Jean reflects on his own carelessness that drew the attention of his enemies. He knew he had to act fast, thinking of what to do next. It's getting dark. He decides to sleep in a tree for the night. But first, he must strip the 8 adventurers of their gear. He also has to butcher the monsters before their bodies start to rot. With a grunt of disgust, he begins the grim task of butchering a humanoid creature. The work is mentally taxing, and he retches from the visceral reality of it. Later, clutching his aching side, he looks up at the starry night sky. He wonders if he can get in touch with Claire to set his broken bones. At the clinic, Jean asks a question, his voice hesitant. Huh, what was that? Claire explains that he can't treat him if Belle is out shopping like today. Then, he asks Jean if he has heard the news. The price of goblin-related materials has been skyrocketing lately. Jean, shocked, covers his mouth as Claire explains the rarest parts. The jet-black eyeballs of a goblin mage are almost never seen on the market. Elsewhere, 2 noble women relax in a lavish room, discussing their recent profits. One admits she was hesitant to anger that boy by selling the adventurer gear. The other says she was also considering a safer, more high-class escape plan. Back at the clinic, Claire notices Jean is lost in thought. He thinks of the 3 rare monster materials he now possesses. Claire snaps him out of it, asking if he is even listening. Jean stammers an apology, his mind racing with the new information. Claire tells him that if he wants to heal quickly, he needs healing magic. After his bones are set, he should go to the church for treatment. A close-up shows the deep, ugly bruises covering Jin's chest and ribs. A young priestess prepares to cast her spell, announcing, "Here I go." Jin grimaces, bracing for the magical healing to begin. He silently admits this is his own fault for having a mind full of lust. He prays to the gods to grant healing to the greatly wounded. A much larger, portly priest shoves the priestess aside, bellowing, "Heal." He forcefully places his hands on Jin's shoulders, ready to cast the spell. Jin's eyes widen in sheer terror at the man's aggressive approach. A blood-curdling scream of agony echoes from the top of the church tower. 2 days later, Jin touches his shoulder, groaning that the ordeal is finally over. The healing magic was incredibly effective, mending his bones in an instant. But the pain, he reflects, was absolutely demonic. As he leaves, Al greets him, asking if he's on his way back from treatment. Al explains that he just finished his second session as well. The party is splitting the donation cost, though one session should have been enough. "Sorry to interrupt your recovery," Al says, "but it's time to get back to work." He adds that it's a good thing Jean didn't die. Jean calls out to Al, stopping him in his tracks. Al turns back with a questioning look, waiting for Jean to speak. Jean asks if he can gather the whole party together for a meeting. The party, Gons, Kimin, and Al, assembles, waiting for him to speak. Gons, his expression intense, asks what Jean just said. Jean looks at his comrades, his face set with grim determination. "Let's break through the level wall," he declares, his voice low but firm. Al explains that with their recent earnings, they can afford the plan. If they focus on work for one more month, they'll have the full amount. Jean realizes this solves their biggest problem, affording an adamantite weapon. A weapon of that quality is needed to defeat a Category 4 monster. He declares that a chance like this will never come again. Kimin remains silent, while Al listens intently to Jin's reasoning. "So," Al asks, his gaze sharp, "what is this crucial plan of yours?" Jin leans in close, telling Al to lend him his ear. The party huddles together at a tavern table as Jin whispers his strategy. He finishes and asks them what they think of his audacious plan. Gons is silent for a moment, a slow grin spreading across his face. He throws his head back and lets out a booming, infectious laugh. "Isn't that the best plan ever?" he roars, turning to his friend. "Right, Al." Jean and Gons both look toward Al, awaiting his verdict. Jean expects Al to call the plan reckless and shoot it down. Al's silhouette looms as he asks if Jean really thought he would say that. A fierce, excited grin spreads across Al's face. Now things are getting interesting. Jin's face breaks into a wide, relieved smile. "All right, it's settled," he shouts. "So," Al asks, getting down to business, "what's our target?" He notes that while Jean was recovering, he was also scouting for their next move. Jean confirms that he already has a target in mind for them. The target for their subjugation quest is revealed, a small, horned lizard. The creature is a Category 4 monster, a formidable challenge. A massive, heavily armored rock lizard is shown, its skin like granite. A rock lizard? Huh, a voice exclaims. I'm getting fired up. Another voice shouts in agreement. All right. Tonight we toast. The four adventurers raise their heavy wooden mugs in a celebratory toast. To our future, Al declares, his voice filled with newfound conviction. The party is shown hunting a mad bear, a fierce Category 3 monster. This beast, which they once would have avoided, is now just a stepping stone. For many adventurers, the mighty city of Rockcliffe represents an insurmountable wall to their progress. Though their paths differ, all adventurers share the dream of reaching the coveted rank 5. Every solitary adventurer, standing against the world, carries their own unique and personal story. Some are inspired by heroic tales. Others are exiled nobles or villagers seeking revenge. The crushing pressure to advance beyond their limits breeds desperation and dark, obsessive thoughts. Though they seemed successful, Gons and his party were no exception to this silent struggle. Their smoldering ambitions were rekindled, fanned into a fierce flame by newfound hope. Al now diligently gathers information. While Kimon has found his voice, their passions reignited. Yet, the most profound transformation of all was the one that overcame the warrior Gons. Once a brute wasting his strength, the hope of breaking the wall made him different. This new, focused warrior is one that Jean has privately dubbed Theatrical Edition Gons. The irritable brawler is gone, replaced by a serious man focused on his grim work. Each member of the party now carries their own burning ambition into the heart of battle. From the shadows, Kimon provides lethal support with his unerring and deadly archery skills. In Gons, a whirlwind of destruction brings his mighty new axe down upon his foes. The black steel of the adamantite axe cleaves through bone with terrifying, absolute ease. And so, with a final decisive blow, they test the weapon's incredible power. Gon stands victorious over his kill, the magnificent black axe buried deep in its flesh. Al turns to Gons, asking for his impression of their new and powerful weapon. Gon swallows hard, his voice filled with awe as he admits it is truly awesome. They have finally obtained it, a weapon of black steel that will never fail them. On the eve of their great quest, Jean finds a quiet moment of reflection. The weight of the coming trial settles upon him as he prepares for their departure. The gruff voice of the guild clerk greets him with a simple, familiar yo. The clerk asks if he's slacking off, but Jean explains that he is off duty. The clerk chuckles, admitting he has heard all about their unbelievably reckless plan. He confirms that only a weapon of black steel can hope to defeat their quarry. Jean admits that the longer they saved, the more unwanted attention they began to attract. The clerk reveals that he, too, once attempted to challenge the very same wall. He and his comrades saved half the money, but one day it simply disappeared. Jean asks if it was thieves, but the clerk says his own friends betrayed him. His face twists with the bitter memory of the anger he felt in that moment. He admits that beneath his anger, he was secretly relieved, terrified of the fight. The clerk's face softens into a warm smile as he urges Jean to go proudly. He waves, promising to have victory drinks ready for their triumphant and proud return. Jean watches the old warrior leave, the man's final words echoing in his mind. He reflects on this truth. Every single adventurer carries their own unique, personal story. The time for reflection is over as he fastens the buckles of his armor. He secures his leather vambraces, the familiar weight a comfort before the journey. He straps the poisoned dagger to his thigh, a grim reminder of past dangers. With a final, resolute step, he sets out to meet his waiting comrades. His party awaits him at the city gate, a united front ready for battle. The sun shines brightly in the sky, a silent witness to their momentous quest. They leave the safety of Rockcliffe's high walls, stepping into the vast unknown. The four warriors stride into the wilderness, their purpose singular, their resolve absolute. Gonza's face is a mask of grim determination, his eyes fixed on the horizon. Al wears a smile of quiet confidence, ready to face the challenge that awaits. Kimon's gaze is sharp and focused, ready for the hunt under his deep hood. And Jean looks to the sky, his heart filled with a hope that conquers all fear.